Shut me off too.
Yeah, she said you are.
Okay, good evening. I'm going to call this meeting of the Gloucester School Committee to order. It is June 23rd, 2021. And we are experimenting a new model tonight. And this meeting is still a Zoom meeting. So this meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting law pursuant to section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. The meeting will be conducted by remote participation. Additionally, all votes taken by the school committee during this and future remote meetings will be by roll call vote. If you're calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or a device, there is a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. As I said, the school committee is here at Gloucester High School Library in person. And we are experimenting on how to develop a hybrid between in-person and remote. So this is an experiment, and we'd be happy to hear feedback of how the public perceives this model. And I would just like to state who is here. We have the superintendent of schools, Ben Lummis. We have principal of Gloucester High School, James Cook. We have the Honorable Mayor of Gloucester, Safafi Romeo-Taken. We have School Committee member Joel Favazza, and School Committee member Laura Wyson, and School Committee member Kathy Clancy, and School Committee member Samantha Watson, and Vice Chair of School Committee Melissa Texera Prince, and myself, Jonathan Pope, the Chair of the School Committee, as well as our recording secretary, Maria Puglisi. Change your name there. I think I did that as required. So that being said, on this special night, we have Kylie Mion's class, her Zoom class, her remote learning class here is going to, well, Kaylee, why don't you tell us what you're going to do?
While I was teaching my amazing class this year, Sophia Smith and I, we decided it would be really fun to learn the Pledge of Allegiance in sign language. I was inspired because when I was watching the inauguration, the woman who said the Pledge of Allegiance did it in sign language. So I said, this would be a really fun way for our students to all do something together, because as we learned, it was really difficult to all talk at the same time while on Zoom together. We used to sing happy birthday to kids, and it would sound kind of crazy. So we couldn't all say the Pledge of Allegiance at the same time. We used to take turns, and someone would say the pledge and someone else would get to hold the flag. They all had a flag at home. But I thought it'd be really fun for us to learn it in sign language so we could all say it together at once. So I have 5 students here with us tonight that volunteered to come on and do the pledge with us in sign language to show you what they learned.
And Kyler, will one of you speak out loud, or should we speak out loud and you'll sign? What's the best?
William volunteered, one of the second graders. He said he would say it along with us.
Great.
So that
Okay.
it was kind of the pace that we were doing it at. So that would be perfect.
Okay, so will you join us in the flag salute?
I pledge
Allegiance
allegiance to the flag,
to the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the
and
republic which it
stands
one nation
nation
under God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wow.
great. Thank you. That was great.
You're welcome.
So much. Thank you. That was the best Pledge of Allegiance ever. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, second graders.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a great summer.
Thanks for joining
Thank
us.
you, Kylie.
Tell your parents you earned ice cream.
I agree.
Okay, thank you very much, and we'll move on to oral communications. At every, the public shall have the opportunity at every regular school committee meeting to be heard under oral communications. Oral communications shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to the school committee business to appear before the school committee, state their problem without debate. The matter may be referred to the proper subcommittee. For items that are on the agenda, members of the public may address the committee with the permission of the chair. A person speaking under oral communications shall be limited to 3 minutes each and shall submit a copy of their prepared communication to the recording secretary. The school committee chair shall not allow complaints as to individual performance or character. That being said, is there anybody who would like to address the school committee under oral communications? Seeing none, I'm going to close oral communications and we'll move on to the next item, which is, I believe, comments from the chairperson and recognitions. And my comments are going to be basically recognitions. So I will start by just saying we made it through a whole school year and we ended up with some great events. The graduation was a beautiful day and it was very well done and just an inspiration. That the valedictorian and salutatorian gave excellent speeches and it was just a perfect day. And the 8th grade graduation was held outside for the first time that I know of. And it was also a very great event and very well done. And so that being said, are there any other recognitions? Kathy?
We just want to let everybody know the Gloucester baseball team and softball teams are continuing and they won their second round of their playoffs today. So keep cheering them on as they advance and take on tougher competition. So good luck to them.
The girls softball team's tomorrow at 4, so I'm gonna try to make it
Here?
after 5:30, yes. Yes, at Boston High.
Super.
Any other recognitions? Okay, well, that being said, we'll move on to, well, we don't have the Student Advisory Council because there's not in school. The consent agenda, are there any items on the consent agenda that anybody would like removed for further discussion? Kathy?
I just wanted to remove item E1 well, not necessarily remove it, but I just want to make sure we do a special acknowledgement. It's quite a nice gift to the vocational program in terms of providing money for supplies and they may need.
Yeah. Anything else?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, Maria, can we have a roll call vote?
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes,
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
and Mr. Frombaza.
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to our deliberations on educational issues. And we will start with the superintendent's report, which, and I'll hand it over to Superintendent Loss.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. So Maria, I just want to show one quick slide about the summer protocols to get that out of the way, just to update the committee on how we're going to operate, which isn't really new news, but just want to remind you and folks listening what we'll be doing for our summer protocols, for our summer programs. Really 2 pieces to this. And I've worked with, this is based on DESI guidance and also Department of Public Health and also checking with Karen Carroll as well. So that's going to be that with our student programs, we're going to continue what we've been doing at the end of this year, which is of course quite different than we were doing. So distancing will continue indoors when students are present. Indoors masks or face coverings are required still. And outdoors masks are not required for students or anyone who's vaccinated. The masks are required for adults who are not vaccinated and cannot maintain 3 feet or more. That's what we were doing in the schools at the end of the year. That hasn't changed. One thing that has changed is for staff programs or administration buildings or meetings where students aren't present. In buildings where there are no students. So for example, this evening, no students are present. We're in a school, so we can have a meeting where we're unmasked as long as we're all vaccinated. So just to reiterate that, in this case, we're following state guidelines for typical office buildings, office and professional buildings. Masks aren't necessary for vaccinated individuals. Masks are required for unvaccinated individuals or outdoors if they can't maintain 3 feet. So trying to sort of normalize, well, follow the guidelines, obviously, but in terms of our professional work, sort of normalize that for folks. And that's going to be happening at the student programs, of course, at West Parish, Beaman, O'Malley, and here at the high school. Any questions? So then we can go on.
Do you want to email me something?
I sent you something.
You did.
But there's also the presentation from Melissa and Alex, which you do or do not have.
I don't have it unless you emailed it.
Well, let me see if I can.
Can I ask a quick question? while you're
Yeah,
on that?
yeah.
I assume the tents are still up at the schools that have some summer programs that
Maria,
had,
just remember, sorry, you are still sharing on, okay.
I know.
for those that had them before.
But she's not sharing her screen.
Oh, she's not?
No, the camera's still on. us.
No. Oh, okay. Steve?
I know they're up at
Okay.
Beaman, at the high school or not?
No.
No. And O'Malley, I'm not sure actually, but O'Malley or West Parish. It's Beaman is using the outdoor space for lunches. West Parish may have enough space inside to do power distance. I do know though, in looking at our survey results, both from staff and also parents, folks are making a new commitment to getting outside. So I'm assuming that'll carry forth in the summer as well. You could, Melissa or Alex, hello, first of all, thanks for being here. Do you have the presentation handy? Could you present it if Maria gives you privileges? Would that work?
Alex, you want to do that? Sure.
If you give Alex, yeah, great,
This so happened.
excellent. That's a much better way of doing it. Still trying to figure out how to do this in person.
All right, so
Just
if
learning.
right, so if you've been logged in,
I could have shown it.
stop right.
Right,
So you're on the right track for BNF and I knocked you off, but you're welcome.
that's all. Okay, it's his fault. Great, so what we're going to show you tonight are some results from student learning and literacy, K-5. So Alex Osborne and Melissa Francis are here, two of our fabulous literacy coaches who you know. And they're going to just give sort of some basics around how we look at this in terms of multi-tiered system of supports, and then also give some data from our results for the current year. They're also explain a little bit about the complexities of using data for this year because we're doing some new things. We don't have longitudinal data now, or like sort of strictly defined. But I will say this: I will sort of give you the headline, which is there's a lot of good news, and they're here to share the good news. So Melissa and Alex, thanks for putting this together. Thanks for being here, and take it away.
Hi, everybody. It's really awkward being on Zoom while you're in person, but I'm going to do my best here. So Alex, I'll just give you a thumbs up when to switch. Okay, great. Okay, so today we're just going to look at the student learning and the literacy data. And honestly, it's just an opportunity to celebrate and reflect. So once we get through the presentation, absolutely ask us questions and we will see what we can do to answer all of them. What we found this year, even in the craziness, we had fewer interruptions of learning and we were able to really streamline our approach and really focus on the essentials for the students. And we continued many of our practices. We focused on Reading Street, as we always do, our phonics programs, empowering writers, and we focused on interventions. So when we think of our interventions, we've always followed the multi-tiered systems of support. You may have heard it as RTI. And we're always striving for Gloucester Public Schools to have 100% learners with successful reading. And realistically, we know that 80 to 90% of them should be at that tier 1, which is the big blue triangle. And basically that's saying 80 to 90% of our students will be able to receive the core instruction, our normal everyday instruction, and be successful. Then you'll notice inside that triangle is a green triangle. And that's saying 5 to 10% of those students will require not only tier 1, but they may require tier 2 as well, which is an additional support, maybe a double dose of something, maybe a little tweak in the instruction, small group, frequency maybe more, but that's saying 5 to 10% of them may require additional supports to become successful. And then you see the little triangle inside of that one, and that's our tier 3. And that's basically saying our students who will require our intensive instruction. So they may require special education, a different programming, a variety of things. But what we're finding is our multi-tiered systems of support is really working well together. So today what our data will show is that our tier 1 core curriculum and the supports we have are working well together. We're showing growth from the beginning to the end of the year. And we're showing growth over time, especially with our DIBELS, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And hopefully we'll see more growth over time with our other assessments. And we really want to speak to the teamwork this year, the flexibility and the creativity that really allowed us to stay true to this process, despite the challenging year that we had with the masks. Teaching students to learn sounds with masks is not the easiest task. And teachers got very creative with that. I saw videos, I saw taking them outside, just a variety of ways to still make learning happen. So we really should give a shout out to all our dedicated teachers because it was pretty incredible to watch. So just a reminder, we talked about this at the beginning of the year. We've had a couple changes in our assessment because, you know, why not have a pandemic and pilot new assessments at the same time? So we've taken on the DIBELS 8th, which is really exciting because it provided new information for us to really target students at risk, and the adoption of STAR, which is really our focus for vocabulary and comprehension, which we can dive into more as we go through the slides. So DIBELS, we've been using DIBELS for forever, it feels like over 10 years. So it still provides that valuable information to let us know which students are being successful and which students are at risk, especially in the areas of word recognition and fluency. But what's different is these subtests provide even more detailed information. So when we go through, you're going to see some slides that show the new DIBELS 8th, and then there will be a couple to show the old, and I'll talk about the differences. Okay, so we're going to go through and we are going to highlight at each grade level one of the subtests and just let you know why it's important and then how well the students did or did not do. So basically, the phonemic awareness is critical in kindergarten. That gives them the opportunity to hear sounds and then break those sounds. So if I say the word cat, they would go k, a, t. And of course, we need speech sounds to map to the print when we read. So it's a really critical skill early on. And if you notice, our kindergarten students as a district were able to meet or exceed the standard 74% of them. So that's pretty exciting to see phonemic segmentation fluency reaching 74% at the end of kindergarten. And in first grade, we are looking at words recoded. And basically that is our nonsense word fluency. And those are words that students have never seen before because we're actually making sure that they're using the two processors in their brain working together. So it's not words that you can just remember by sight. It's words that you have to use your phonetic ability and then blend them. And as we know, blending is an essential skill for reading as well. And if you notice, our students, 80% of them in first grade are at or above our benchmark. And you'll notice a new color. I should have pointed that out in the kindergarten. For the DIBELS 8th, we have blue, which means that they're actually exceeding the benchmark. So a lot of this, we're talking about the green and blue put together. because it's meeting the standard or exceeding the standard. So we have 80% meeting or exceeding the standard. So that's really exciting news when we see those students in blue. That means they're at the 80th percentile. So those are the students that we can really start to give enrichment, really start to challenge, really start to push into the next subtests and into the
Could we ask a question?
Yeah, let's see. I think there's a couple questions.
So
Sure.
I said, and I'm sorry if I missed this, the abbreviations across the top of the table, LNF, PSF. So PSF was phonemic, the fluency, right? I recognize that. Are we just kind of walking through those, or can you tell us what those mean?
Sure, I can, what we've done in each one is just highlight a particular subtest, but I can absolutely walk you through.
I
So,
just want to tell me what they mean, that might be helpful.
so starting from the left, you have letter naming fluency, and then phonemic segmentation fluency, and then nonsense word fluency, correct letter sounds. So that means the student can look at a word like MIP and just do p, but not necessarily blend them together. So they're starting to make the letter sound connection, but they're not necessarily blending them together yet. Then if you notice the star, it's nonsense word fluency, words read correctly, which is when they start to blend them together. And then the WRF is word reading fluency, which it's automatically recognizing words. Then we have oral reading fluency, the ORF. How many words are they reading correctly in connected text? And then ORF, which is oral reading fluency with the accuracy. So are they making errors along the way, or how accurate are they? And then our composite score, which is the composite score is all of those subtests weighted differently to create one score to predict risk. And Dibbles has done all the research on that, not us. So we have that one score to look at overall. Okay, we have, again, 75% doing well as a whole. And then if we know those students aren't, we would look back at the different subtests and really find out where their particular needs are.
My second question is, there's two that don't have any blue. Was blue an option and we just didn't hit that, or were those two blue not an option?
Nope, so letter naming fluency and accuracy, the only two that either you meet the mark or you don't.
Okay, thank you.
Is that something?
Mary, do you have a question?
Laura has a question.
And it may just be that I can't read all the percentages from where I'm sitting, but it looks like the composite, just by the color graph, like quite a few of the 80% or above actually exceeded, right? Blue is exceeded, is that right?
Yes.
So I would love to know sort of the percentages, that met, and then the percentages that exceeded. It's sort of an interesting
Sure.
number.
Right,
got this
we're
one,
We're
yeah.
gonna show that with a composite later, right?
This got emailed too.
So in the
Yeah, well, I don't want to try to watch both.
Okay, so-
I
So-
can-
first grade, you can see that the composite score for the district is 44% exceeded the standard and 31% are meeting the standard. So we have 75% meeting or exceeding the standard for composite score in first grade, which is a pretty great place to be after a pandemic, missing 60 days of their kindergarten year. So
Absolutely.
Fantastic place to be.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, moving on, Alex. And please interrupt me anytime with questions. And if I can't answer, Alex always can. Okay, so second grade, we're going to highlight the word reading fluency. And if you notice, we put the meeting or exceeding together, which is 72% of our second graders are ending the year at or above benchmark for word reading fluency. And word reading fluency really measures how quickly can they look at a word, recognize it, and be able to say it out loud. So what we're really seeing right there is, are they able to come up with the word immediately? So it's really for efficiency and word recognition. We just recently heard from Melissa Orkin. It's like walking into Starbucks and seeing your best friend right away. You would immediately recognize those features. You cannot not read the word. And that's what we're really trying to get at, is how quickly can they not read the word. They want to be able to read that word as quickly and efficiently so that they can get to the meaning, so that they can get to the connected text, so that they can start to comprehend. So we want that word recognition to be immediate and efficient. So that was pretty exciting to see. Again, our second graders who lost 60 days of first grade in-person learning were able to meet that mark at 72%. So that's pretty exciting news. Any questions before I continue? Good.
I have a question.
Kathy? Go ahead.
Melissa, are these similar, these tests are given at the beginning of, right, the assessments at the beginning, the middle, and the end? So what you're showing here is the end, but I'm just curious anecdotally, what kind of scores did you have at the beginning of the school year? And is this like a huge leap from the beginning to now? I mean, I assume the beginning of the year scores must have been lower than what you historically would have seen.
Yes, and I can show you that we have a slide that will share that information.
Thanks.
And okay, so, and we are on to the third grade, and we were highlighting the composite score. And the reason we chose to highlight the composite score for third grade is because that's when they're really making that shift from that skill instruction into the comprehension and reading. So we chose the composite score because hopefully what we're seeing is that they are meeting or exceeding in the composite score so that they really can start making that shift. And you'll see that 75% of our grade 3 students were ending the year at or above in the composite score. So what it does is takes all of those subtests and put it together, and we can look and say, okay, 80th percentile, 60th percentile, 40th percentile, 20th percentile. And fourth grade, we decided to highlight accuracy because we wanted to show that not only are the skills being taught in the younger grades, but they're really sustaining that word recognition with accuracy. So we're finding that our curriculum is very strong in the area of word recognition. We have 93% reading at core. So you can't exceed the expectation in accuracy, but we have 93% of our fourth grade students who are meeting that benchmark in accuracy. So that's really great news that when they are reading a passage connected text, they're reading it with accuracy so that they can get to the meaning of what they're reading. They're not getting hung up on the decoding part of it. They're not trying to figure out what the words are. They know them and they can focus on what matters. And then fifth grade, we focused on maze because it's one of the subtests we don't really talk about as much. It starts in grade 2, and it is for silent reading, fluency, and comprehension. It's a closed passage, which is actually missing words along the way, and they have to choose which word makes the most sense. So it's our glimpse into their sentence level comprehension while they're reading silently. And you can see 80% of our students in fifth grade are meeting or exceeding that expectation for maze. And then what we would do, if they're not meeting that, it's not necessarily letting us know that there's just a comprehension issue. We would look back and look at their fluency, and then we would look back and look at their word recognition, and we would look back and look at their phonemic segmentation. So one skill constantly builds on the other. So knowing that 80% of them, then we can look at that 26 and 13 who did not achieve that throughout the entire district. We have 26 students who did not achieve that. We can really start to see, oh, it's this student or that student, and this is why. So it's really great information for us to have. Okay.
Let's just pause there, Melissa. Any questions before we go on? Great. Oh, thank you. Oh, wait, hold on. Question, yep.
So it's a question I have. I'm not trying to be glass half empty, but you want to ask a question. Whenever I see such an excess of exceeding expectations, I always go, was the expectation set properly? Because the largest subset in almost all of those charts were students exceeding. And especially as you keep pointing out that they're exceeding after getting, cut off the year before, in your experience running, with this curriculum, do you feel that these targets are grade level appropriate?
Absolutely. I can say that with certainty. DIBELS is probably the best research based assessment out there nationally. And it's been out there for 20 something years, and they just continue to improve and continue to update. And they have thousands of students who they will absolutely test it out and see what the norm is. So they have done their due diligence with these assessments. So I will say with confidence that we chose the right assessment. There's no doubt in that. Would you agree, Alex? Yes.
And Melissa, in terms of the, Dibble's 8th here, with, with the blue, exceeding as well, I mean, was that also part of raising the standard again for them?
So I believe that they realized, because meeting the benchmark is the lowest expectation, just to keep that in mind. That's where they want them just to make the mark so that you can breathe easy and know that your core instruction will do the trick, right? It's not saying to stop there. It's not saying, okay, you met the mark, now you're good to go and off on your own. You still need that solid, good instruction, but you don't necessarily need that tier 2 approach with additional or something different. You can be in your classroom, get the core instruction and continue forward, and you'll continue on the trajectory on up. With the blue, it's basically saying that you've exceeded that expectation. You're in a really good place that you can dive deeper into that comprehension and that vocabulary and, continue up that ladder of instruction and find other ways to really enrich what you're learning. So I think it took it to that level. But remember, the benchmark is the lowest where we want them to be. It's not where we want to end. It's letting us know, okay, we can breathe easy and keep them in core curriculum. And if we see yellow or red, then we know, okay, we need to do more for this student. We may need to tweak things and change things to get them to the success level.
Thank you, Melissa.
Mm-hmm. So looking back, and it is comparing a little bit apples to oranges instead of apples to apples. Dibble's Next did a really nice job, but like we mentioned, Dibble's 8th provides additional subtests to give us even more information. But looking back at 2018, 2019 was our closest year that we're able to finish the data at the end of the year, because last year we ended in March and we didn't have end of the year data. So we ended our year in 2019 as a district at 51%. Since then, we have continued robustly with the multi-tiered systems of support. And you will see on the next slide, now we are ending our year with 72%. So it's great to see that we were able to continue on the path. Teachers felt they had fewer interruptions this year. We really streamlined, we focused on the essentials. So I think our instruction and our approach is really working. And we're not done yet. 72% is good, but it's not good enough. So we want to continue on that path. We want to see more of that 90% of those students. So we still have a lot of work to do, but we should be really proud of the work that we did, even considering all the obstacles. Is there any questions about this?
Yeah,
slide?
so
You can see the beginning of the data to the end, which I can highlight for you if you'd like. This is the slide that would show that, Kathy.
sure.
So the beginning on the left, yeah.
So my question is, the 2021 year, the 4th graders, and then the last slide before that, they would have been the 2nd graders. And so it seems like that class seems to be, coming in lower than their peers ahead and after them. I'm curious if there's any, any understanding as to what's going on in that one class that the instruction seems to be, not achieving the same results as their peers.
So it's the district data, so it would actually be, many classes throughout each of the schools. So sometimes you just see that in data. I can't really speak specifics because we, again, are only at our own schools. So I could, speak to East Gloucester very easily, but I can't really speak to exactly the reason for that unless I really sat back and analyzed every school's data. So
is that something of concern that would be looked at? It just seems it's an outlier, right? And that chart, they're 10 points back, and one before they're similarly back. And again, if it is, if you were to toggle school by school, if you said, I'm making up, West Parish is having a really tough time, and they're pulling, and it's commensurate with the other 4, then you kind of know it's West Parish's class, versus the rest. But if it's across the district, was something changed that year that they received different instruction? Is my curious.
That's probably an area across schools that we can improve on and do more work on.
Right.
So the coaches work together and they're working together with with an eye towards their own school and not as much looking across, to identify where our strength areas. Is there a school that could need support from another teachers at a different school because they're stronger in areas you're describing? So I think that's a place that we can probably,
Because I imagine Dibbles, when you could run a report by school and check that year and see if it's universal or if it's, one or two schools, where we don't know what's going on over there, we gotta get in there and find out, because if it was 2 fourth grade classes instead of all 5, then that number would be even lower than the 62. That's the composite, right?
Right. Yeah, I think, and that's sort of across this data we can do.
Right.
Yeah.
I can say that our ELL population may have been higher coming in that year, special education population. I mean, there's so many variables that go into that. The class could have been smaller, so the percentages are higher. There's so many variables that go into it, but it's definitely something that we as coaches look at our school level and definitely continue the discussion to improve. So Kathy, just so you are aware, if you look, we had 14% exceeding in kindergarten. Now we have 42% exceeding. So that's a huge growth. 15% were meeting the benchmark, 33% are now meeting the benchmark. In first grade, if I just do the combination of meeting and exceeding, we had 52 at the beginning of the year. Now we have 75. Second grade, we had, you're making me do the math on the spot, 63%. I'm a literacy coach. No, and then ending the year with 74%. Third grade, we had 77%. So we started in a really strong place and we ended with 75. Bad day, bad, those little changes happen absolutely in the data. Fourth grade, we had 68 and we ended with 62. And fifth grade, we had 75 and ended with 70. That will change because sometimes in the beginning, the kids treat the oral reading fluency as a race. How many words can I read really quickly without breathing, without hesitating, without stopping at punctuation? Then they realize the purpose behind this assessment, that we want them to become really good readers and focus on the comprehension. So you'll see a variable in the meeting or exceeding for sure at times.
Melissa, also just to clarify, am I right in thinking that the benchmark also changes from the beginning of the year to the end of the year? It's not the same benchmark.
Right, it's a moving target.
Yeah, it's a moving target, exactly. So, and I think also that fifth grade was 65 and then ended up at 70, not
Yes,
75.
sorry, 65, you got it, thank you. And then,
So I'll help you with the math there.
thank you. And then as a whole, you can see that it was 57% and now it is at 72%. So that's a great growth over time.
It's actually, I think it's more for Ben, although if they want to chime in, that's fine. So using this chart here, obviously, the goal is to have 100%. And so, as superintendent, when you look at this, not to diminish the huge progress with the blue growing and, but it looks like a lot of blue is growing out of the green. The red seems to be shrinking for the most part throughout the year. That's excellent, especially up in kindergarten. But still, when you look at that and you go, okay, 30% of our fifth graders are not meeting the benchmark for Dibbles. 38% of our fourth graders are not meeting the benchmark for Dibbles. What's your reaction to that? Is that acceptable, or is that something we need to,
Well, one thing I noticed was 20, you mentioned 30 at fifth grade, right? But 25 is pretty consistent, in terms of in red and yellow, across grades, that sort of stuff. And also
in multiple districts or just in ours?
No, in ours. And
Okay.
also 25 is about, give or 2% in the subtest as well. Okay, so that's interesting to me. I don't know what it means yet. It's
Okay.
interesting. But what is really great is our sort of culture and practice of looking more deeply at those individual students. And they're going to show you how we can do that with the STAR. But that's a crucial piece: is look at the individual students, look at patterns, whether it's at a school or a grade level or across grade level,
Right.
and sort of stuff, to see those patterns, to see what there are patterns, first of all. Okay,
Mhm.
and that's the work. I have a lot of confidence in the literacy coaches that help support and help teachers do with teachers. But I also think that Melissa's been really open, and I agree with that. That we want to really get 80% at least of our students are benchmark or at benchmark or higher, just with their core instruction from their classroom teacher. Okay, and then, but our goal certainly is 100%. And so the simple answer to your question is no, we're not there yet. But I believe that we have good core practices
Right.
to help.
We certainly jumped 20% in 2 years, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, I
that's,
mean, yeah, we're really on the way, and
and I don't want to diminish anyone's work and diminish anyone's accomplishments. This is
No, I-
certainly progress.
I
But
always want us, and these guys too, especially, are a good example is how we continue to get better every day. And the way to do that is to work together, is to use data, use our in-house expertise as well as outside expertise when necessary. But no, we have to continue to get better, absolutely.
So my question is, when in the fall do you collect this data again? So that we can compare to see if there's any loss over the summer. I mean, I know we've been doing this every year, but it just seems with the consistency of remote learning that I think that's one of the reasons the scores have come up, because of the consistency in teaching and learning in general, not just remote learning, but in-class learning. So when in the fall will you be able to report out for us to see
So
if there's been any changes over the summer for those that may not attend summer school or keep up with reading or things like that over the summer?
yep, so every year we do it 3 times a year. We do
Yeah.
September, we do January, February, and then we'll do the end of the year. So every year we do 3 times. And unfortunately, there's always summer regression, and we talk about it and we give reading challenges, but we need to continue to say that to parents. It's really about getting them on board and making the children read at home every day, because it is something you have to practice, and if you want to get better at painting, you practice. If you want to get better at soccer, you practice. Reading, you have to practice. I mean, think about just all of you reading a passage in the room. Some of you are going to take longer, some of you are going to be quicker, but at the end, I would think that you'll all comprehend it. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the scores too. Even though some students are going to be slower, some students are going to be faster. In this particular assessment, it gives little glimpse. It's like taking their temperature when they're sick. It gives you some information, but it doesn't tell the whole story of the student. And that's really where we come in the process. We really work with the teachers to know the entire student and have that understanding to really make sure we're meeting their individual needs. So as much as we use this data, we use a lot of information to really target the needs of the students.
And with the funding that's come forward from federal funding to do summer school, because of the pandemic related to that, have the students in the red and yellow been identified and invited to extra courses over the summer?
Yes, so we actually had a very thorough process that we looked at the data, chose the students, invited them, talked with the parents, and told them all the reasons why it was important. And many of them did accept and are attending the summer programs. So that was excellent, exciting news for us, because we always wanted to provide opportunities, and it was really exciting that we could do that. The Y's always been a great option, and this was even better because then the Y collaborated with us. So it was exciting for us.
I think it's really important for us to look at how they do in the first round of Bowls and Star.
Exactly.
To understand if what we're doing in summers is helping.
And to see if summer school can become something permanent going forward, if it's that effective. And I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you both. I mean, it's such an asset to the school district. Both of you put your heart and soul into this, and we don't get to see you that often, and just wanted to take that opportunity and say thank you.
Thank you.
Laura has a question.
So given this great news and the sort of growing blue, colors help me. Are there, I know that you're working on this, but are there sort of practices and curriculum for those kids who are exceeding, right? I mean, to keep them engaged and interested. Sort of it's all the differentiation is hard all the time. This year it was even harder. But can you just speak a little bit to that as that grows?
Sure. You guys are really just jumping ahead here. I love it.
Got a long night here.
On my toes. I have my notes and I'm just going to throw them out the window. So yes, the answer is yes. We're always looking to improve. We're always looking to make progress with all of our students. We realized that Reading Street was a really great place to start. It created a common language across the district. It created just a common core across the district that every fifth grade teacher knew what to expect, the pace and the rate and what they were teaching. So that was a really great place to start. But we have improved so much that we're realizing we can do better. We want we're starting to explore new curriculums so that we can dive deeper, to have better background knowledge, to have better content, to be culturally responsive. So we are starting to explore different curriculums and considering piloting them in the schools so that we can dive deeper. So those students who are already at the benchmark will be able to go deeper into the comprehension and vocabulary. We want to be sure that we see the vertical alignment because we know that middle school is struggling with that the content knowledge, the background knowledge, we need to start at the younger grades to continue to improve that. So by the time they get to middle school, it continues to grow. So that is one of the things that we're working on. Joel mentioned what about those students who are still in red and yellow? We are actually adopting early bird screener, which catches them in kindergarten so that we can red flag them earlier on, because the way our brains are, they are more able and willing really to learn, but really more capable of taking in new information at an earlier age. It takes much less time and frequency when they're young to be able to close that gap than when we figure it out in fourth grade. So we're adopting a new screener so that we'll even have more information about how the student learns and be able to target their needs even sooner. So we are doing things kind of all over K through 5, and we work together really well, all 5 reading coaches. And Greg is always, leading that and helping us. We have worked with Melissa Orkin, which is the developmental psychologist who works for Tufts. Part of her work was RAVO, which we've adopted as one of our tier 2 or tier 3 curriculums for students who are in those red or yellow categories. So the work continues constantly. So we are never satisfied until we see 100 there. We're not satisfied. We're not done yet.
Listen, just in the interest of time, we've got some folks who are also need to do some presentations as well. Can we skip over Star 360 for now and just go to the conclusions?
Sure.
Because we'll get back to Star 360 in the summertime and the fall as well.
Absolutely. All right. So basically, just despite the challenging year and learning through masks and social distancing and trying to prevent a lot of small group instruction, we were able to continue to move forward. And we were really excited to see that. The teachers worked creatively, they were flexible. We really saw growth, as you could see, from the Dibbles Next to the Dibbles 8th, not only in 1 year, but in the past years till now. We adopted 2 new assessments during all of that, and we're learning as we go. We definitely have a lot more to learn about STAR, but I think once we have the MCAS data and a couple of years with STAR, we'll be able to do that. But the teachers are very excited about what it provides as far as standards and being able to see which standards the students have mastered and are still working on. So I think that helps with their instruction as well. And we're really proud that we're continuing that strong multi-tiered systems of support.
How long does a 5th grade Dibbles assessment take to execute?
1 minute.
1 minute. And is it, it's all like app based?
Nope, it's actually on paper, pencil, and person to person. So they just read a short passage out loud for 1 minute.
I'm just gonna have them come and give us the 5th grade Dibbles assessment. Right? She said, I assume you'll all get this. I'm like, I don't know. It's like, let's see if I can still do this,
You're
right?
smarter than a 5th grader.
Right. It also puts a perspective on, like, if I end up in the yellow, I'll go, okay, well, I have to, right.
And
Right,
then the maze is 3 minutes, just to answer the complete question. So it's 1 minute for the oral reading fluency, and then maze is 3 minutes that they read it silently and choose the word that makes the most sense.
So Melissa, it sounds like, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It sounds like these assessments are done one-on-one, not whole class at the same time.
Right. So this is done one-on-one and the STAR assessment is computer-based and that can be done whole group.
Can I just ask who does the assessment? How is that performed? Does the teacher do it in class or do the coaches go in? They called out individually? How does that work?
So it's, it depends, varies on school based on the resources and who is in particular roles, but I can speak to East Gloucester and I know Alex can speak to Plum. I take on certain grade levels and I also have interventionists who will work with them one-on-one. And again, it depends. You want them to be comfortable. You want them to know the person that's assessing them. You want it to be in a quiet place. So we have designated areas in our building. We have designated people who work with those particular grade levels that are responsible to do the assessments, and they get trained by us to do those assessments. So it's pretty.
So as one student's being tested, the rest of the class is continuing with their education? Is that how that works? Okay, thank you. That's very helpful for me.
Those are the questions, actually, because I want to make sure it was one-on-one and the person
Yeah.
feel comfortable. Not everyone is comfortable reading out loud.
Yeah.
Right.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. It's very impressive.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Melissa, so much. Really appreciate all your work on this. All your work every day. Thank you.
For having
You and,
us.
you and all other coaches, thank you very much.
Okay.
Right. Yeah,
Thank you, Maria. Figure out ways so you're not doing every single day.
I've been told to be careful.
Ready for it?
Oh, yeah, we go. So, Principal Cook is here to give you an update on the high school improvement plan. And James, take it from here.
Can we get an update on the prom too?
Just
asking.
I'll answer all questions.
Thank you.
I didn't know, you know what? I didn't know.
Dying to know.
It was so bad.
I can start the prom.
Yes, that'd be great.
So
Yeah.
the prom
Thank
right
you.
out here in the area beyond the softball field fence, and hopefully folks will get to the softball game tomorrow. Yeah. So you can see where we had the tent. Yeah, we had a giant tent out there. It was a beautiful night. At 6:15, the tide turned and the wind came and took all the bugs away. Gentle wind. It was. This year prom was designed to be just the class of 2021 who attended. And they were all, decked out as usual in normal prom gear. We did the promenade as usual in the field house. And then they just processed out to the tented area catered by the Causeway. So fantastic food. It was really, really great. Kids danced and, when the end of the night came, there were still students on the dance floor. They didn't want to go home. It was really a beautiful way of ending the year. The only sad part was normally prom is the beginning of that season. Then we have awards night and then we have graduation. So afterwards, a lot of us thought, wait a minute, that's it.
Yeah.
We just
Right, bye, guys.
Right. But it was a great, but it was a great way to end the year, outside, unmasked, all together, with a celebration of the
That's
class.
a better venue than most.
Yes, I
Right,
know, as a
right.
school, right, we're a little bit lucky to have.
it's perfect.
Yeah.
That's one of the things you think about, do you remember, I think when we were in middle school, there was still like the semi-formal in 8th grade, and like you went and you bought clothes, you went to this thing, whatever, and then eventually we went to luau. And that seems so much more appropriate for 8th graders. I'm like, what are we doing with this? And it's like this kind of stuff,
Yeah,
Prom is very expensive for the class,
It is.
and it's very expensive for the students who attend personally. When most of, it's the kind of thing to, put out there for class 22, saying, hey, I'm sure Damersport will have us back, but,
Right,
right.
here's what tent rental costs, and here's what it costs to order from the Causeway instead of,
so the discussion has largely been, as you were just alluding to, about some of the other events. So some of the advisors and some of the students are talking about, the use of our school and the beautiful
Yeah.
space we have here for some of the other events that we have.
Sure,
Which
yeah.
prom might still be, culminating in
Sure,
that
sure, yeah.
Danvers point.
Did you get any feedback on the timing of the prom? Like, I know we usually do it the night before graduation, which.
Well, we moved it, so for the last 3 years prior to this,
That was
and
two.
this year, we moved it to a week before, so we have a whole week between prom and
Okay,
graduation.
I thought it was only the past 2 years.
it was the year after my first year as principal, so
Okay.
this is my 5th year, so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Anybody's
three-
guess at this point.
Yeah.
Something along. those
Something along those
Okay.
lines, yes.
All right.
And so we made that change to stretch it out a little bit.
Right,
and
which I think.
it also allowed us to move the awards night from prom Friday, awards night Saturday, graduation on Sunday,
Yeah, it's a lot.
to prom the Friday before. A week goes by, then Friday, we have graduation practice, and we bring the students back in, we sign the yearbooks and have that fun, like we did this year too, we got to do that event, which was
Okay.
almost as fun as everything else,
Right.
just more informal. Then the Friday night is awards night, and then Sunday graduation, so we've stretched it out a little
Right.
bit, and a little bit more breathing space for
What's
all
the
of
parent
us.
night, the parent prom?
That varies, that's about a month or so prior to, prior to.
That's been nice too, that.
Thank you for that. I've been
Yes.
curious.
Parent events too, we'll get back to that next year, Ben, come along.
Yeah, listen, students, everyone goes to the parent prom and then it starts after prom, and has a great time at prom, but I remember it happened to me as a graduating class, I've never been able to talk to them, they get back, like, prom was great, but like, we actually like the parent, everyone goes back and says, prom was great, but that one with like mom and dad, I've never seen mom and dad that, enjoyable before.
Yeah. Thank you for asking, that's fun to talk about.
I wanted to crash it, but I thought I'd get in trouble, so I didn't.
The people did come down to take their pictures, we kept them, away, we have to keep them at bay, but yeah, a lot of people wanted to see the kids, as they do every year.
Right.
That's one of the things I told Ben about early on, right, is how popular Promenade is, right, for our community, and we
Yeah.
streamed the Promenade as well. So a lot of people got to watch it, just like we've been able to stream so many events. Gloucester Education Foundation helped fund some of those things, KPN Live to do the streaming.
And I noticed a lot of pictures were taken down the boulevard too, which is a beautiful place.
Yes.
So, I mean, it just makes sense to do everything here in the community if you can.
Those tulips, oh my goodness.
It was a good time, good way to end the year.
All right. So the series.
So.
I see everything else in this report, it's just as glowing, right? Just as carefree.
So the Gloucester High School Improvement Plan for this year, I'm going to focus on how we've been able to blend together two different plans into one here. So in the next slide, some of the work that we were able to dig into this year was combining the Sustainable Improvement Plan that came about with our partnership with the statewide system of support. And you heard a little bit about that from Lynn a couple of weeks ago, right? Similar process at the middle school level.
I'm sorry, Maria, could you present, just so if people are watching at home, it's the full screen? Top right,
Upper right.
upper right,
There you go, yeah.
there we go, thank you.
How do I have to go to the next one?
Right arrow?
Yeah, right arrow, yeah.
I hope.
Yes, that's correct, right arrow. Okay.
Maria, you're becoming a Zoom expert.
Thank you, Maria.
Next slide.
So and then the second plan that we need to weave together is the school growth plan that's part of our accreditation through NEASC. Pulling those two things together in the next slide, you'll see in red the elements that we needed to make sure came across to the blended plan. The goal of improving instructional practices, particularly with a focus on higher order thinking and meaningful thinking for students at all levels. The goal of improving attendance, particularly among our chronically absent students, and then to improve that transition from the middle school to the high school. So those elements needed to be blended. And then in the next slide, you'll see in red the elements that needed to be blended from the NEASC plan, which was creating one of the requirements for accreditation is a written curriculum in a standard format for all courses in all departments. Part of our focus as a school is on improving civic engagement to achieve our vision of the graduate, which is having the skills for productive citizenship. We wanted to improve the social emotional learning and make that really an explicit part of the experience at Gloucester High School as part of the NEASC plan. And then finally, we wanted to make sure we were making decisions, we were determining what should be happening in classes, what should be happening in the life of the school based on that vision of the graduate, which is again, based on what are the skills needed for productive citizenship. So blending those together, all those various areas became two goals. We wanted to keep it as focused as possible. So what we're doing in this first goal is really, this is the goal that focuses on instruction and curriculum. Like, what does the learning look like? And so for us, the learning looks like a focus on culturally responsive instructional practices. You just heard Melissa weave that in at the end with how they're updating the curriculum, right? And looking at any curriculum that's culturally responsive. So that's been our focus for the last several years. And what that means is that our culturally responsive education, students really need to be engaged in what we call meaningful thinking. So trying not to use jargon here, but actually saying, well, what is higher order thinking or meaningful thinking? It's analysis, evaluation, and creation. So students are doing something with what they learned. They're applying it in some way. And that's what we're assessing, is that application. And then what that leads into, of course, strongly is if they're doing that, then they're achieving our vision of the graduate, right? They're developing communication, collaboration, problem solving skills that are needed for productive citizenship. What is all that based on? It's based on that written curriculum that you heard NIASC is asking for, right? That's how we get to that meaningful instruction, meaningful assessment. It's written down in that written curriculum. So that's one goal. And the second goal focuses on social emotional learning. If we focus on social emotional learning, we'll have improved student wellness, we'll have improved student attendance, we'll have a better 8th to 9th grade transition, and a more equitable and inclusive school climate and culture. So essentially, one is a teaching and learning goal, and the other is the social emotional learning and the environment needed to really achieve those teaching and learning goals. Okay. So now I wanted to break things down into what are the action steps that this presentation could be 60 pages long, of course. But you can ask questions, of course, as you go if you want to dig deeper here. So what does it mean to use brain-based culturally responsive teaching practices? What that means for us is that we continue the implementation of the professional development we've been doing, the work we do during the school day and PLC time at the department level, and then the evaluation work, right? Observations by peers, evaluation by administrators that show that students, that teachers are able to build their awareness of the relationship between the brain and culture. What is the effect of how we treat students on whether or not they're able to learn? But we build relationships, but the purpose of building relationships is so we have a learning partnership with our students in our building. The term that we keep returning to is the warm demander, right? We are able to ask a lot of our students because we show we care about our students. And then third, what does the instruction look like? Well, every day we're igniting learning, we're chunking the material into amounts that students can process. We're giving them an opportunity to process that learning, to think it through, to make it their own. And then we're making sure we review that or capture it in some way to make sure that they got what they needed to in terms of skill and knowledge, or if they haven't, we're able to intervene the next day. So that's what instruction looks like. And the next slide, this is where we talk about the vision of the graduate. Again, this extends the previous priority area by identifying the related skills and the purpose of the skills that were talked about in the previous slide. So we want to always be looking at our lessons to make sure that they're incorporating communication skills, collaboration opportunities, and opportunities to problem solve, not just to know stuff, but to solve problems with the knowledge that students are gaining. And then as we go through this year coming in October, folks might remember that our NIASC visit was to have been the day we went to full in-person. It was scheduled for the exact same day. So we were able to move it into the fall. We could have pulled it off. We pulled everything else off, but it was helpful to not have to do that at the same time. So with that feedback, do we need to revisit these skills, the communication, collaboration, and problem solving skills? Are there things left out or need to be refined? That'll be a step for the year coming, an action step. The next slide shows how, in order to support this, so you've heard from the middle school and from the elementary schools about what intervention looks like, especially tier 2 interventions. We just heard about that concept is relatively new for high schools, right? So we have been able to develop through some budget decisions we've made over the last couple of years and support from the school committee, implement academic skills and practice classes, English, and this year coming, English skills and practice classes, and math skills and practice classes that take a diagnostic similar to what you just saw that would happen at the elementary level and design interventions for those students. So they're getting a double dose, as you heard about earlier, of whether it's the need to develop, the habits of a learner, develop particular English skills or particular math skills. Those are those tier 2 interventions, which up to this point, students have needed special education services to get. Now we're able to provide it more broadly. The other ways of supporting the vision of the graduate, particularly in communication, is getting the keys to literacy training to the new staff and to the remaining staff who have not been trained yet in keys to literacy to develop those communication skills across, not just in English classes, but across the curriculum. And then with John Saruf, folks may know from the community, he's come in and done professional development for us on the Dialogic Classroom, which is, we've done social studies department focus, but also we've done school-wide PD. And those Dialogic Classroom practices are really where students work on the collaboration skills, to have civil dialogue, right? How do we engage in civic discourse? So to achieve that vision of the graduate, we have that professional development as well. All right. So got that, and now where's it written down, right? So you get those are good concepts, but it's written down in a comprehensive curriculum. Somehow during all of this year, we were able to get very close to a fully written curriculum.
Wow.
And this has been a goal for like 20 years at Foster High School. And we've never been as close as we are now. It's really exciting, and the work that teachers were able to do, particularly in that February, March period, to make sure we got that written curriculum in, was really amazing, to be honest. So now we get to review and improve, look for gaps. Where are the places where we might not have we might have a regular test still, and we would want to add a performance assessment where they're applying the learning rather than just a standard test. We're already beginning to look at those areas where we can do more higher order thinking, more meaningful thinking in not only the assessment, but then the instruction. So those steps are very department specific, right? It looks different in math than it does in vocational. It's going to look different in the art classes than it does in our English classes. And some of that work starting this summer. Some people are somehow not exhausted enough, but this is, I think coming through, this is really nourishing and exciting work for a lot of the staff, right? To get to what they learned and to be able to apply what they learned and have quiet, more contemplative moments with their peers, to design this curriculum. A lot of curriculum requests Greg and I fielded. Really exciting. So the next slide. Shifting gears now to that second priority area, the priority area around social emotional learning. We've done a lot of work in this area too. So to guide the work, to achieve this goal, we have a social emotional school growth teams that we didn't run this past year, that we will run again next year. We have a mental health ambassador team. I presented to folks about the students who have done some training for the mental health ambassadors. That's awesome. We have a mental health and social emotional learning steering committee that has faculty, staff, and community stakeholders that we meet regularly to guide research and piloting a CASEL aligned social emotional learning activities. That's a particular set of social emotional skills that students learn. And so we'll be piloting a way of teaching that. We'll be continuing professional development, as we did a lot of during, especially early this past year, in social emotional learning and mental health wellness for staff and for teachers. And I want to make a link here back to the idea of how in that culture responsive teaching model, the importance of building relationships for learning partnerships, that idea of the warm demander. We care about kids, and because we care about them, we can ask more of students. But this is not only about social emotional learning, it's also the foundation for academic growth. So the next slide, we'll be working with Attendance Works in the year to come. Some folks are familiar with Attendance Works. We'll be reviewing attendance policies and practices. Some great stuff about how we communicate with families about absences. So there's great data about everyone underestimates the amount they're absent, right? But if you're absent once every 2 weeks, you're chronically absent, and you've missed 18 days by the end of the year. That's a lot of learning. Right? So communicating that sort of thing so people are more aware, it's more present in our minds when families and students are making decisions about attendance.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are we still filing CRAs for
Oh, yeah.
attendance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, you can imagine during the pandemic, those
It was
were
limited.
difficult for the courts and so on,
Okay.
but yes.
So that's
This is
gonna
one
pick
of
back
the
up next year?
interventions. And it was on the table this year too.
Okay,
But what we're finding in our initial professional development we did with Attendance Works this year, that's at the end.
yeah.
What are the
Last resort,
interventions
yes, exactly.
before that? Those,
Yeah.
really, that's a bullet about interventions for chronic absenteeism. For some students, it's about incentives, right? It's creating some kind of incentive plan that the student then buys into with some sort of, a reward for the student along the way. For the absenteeism. For other students, it's some underlying issue that's not attendance, but it has them, maybe it might be a mental health issue, it might be an issue with a peer or if they're at home, those kinds of interventions are.
And those things are identified through CRAs too. The reason why I asked is just because of the fact that, Gloucester District doesn't do them anymore and you have to go to juvenile. So I know that's a barrier in itself to have an employee out of the building all day long to go wait in front of a judge for hearings. So I know that's inconsistent with what we would expect in our community, but that's the way it is
That's what
right
we have
now.
now. Yeah.
So I was just wondering if those
Sure. Oh, yeah.
processes
Sorry,
were still in
still
place.
one of the tools. Yeah. But these sort of, one of the things that's new with Attendance Works are sort of scripts and approaches to having more in-depth uncovering what might be underlying the absence, right? And like what are some questions, right? There's expertise there, kinds of questions to ask to get underneath before for an intervention. And then our attendance team that we did launch this year, and Amelia has one as well. We figured out that we need some tweaking about the relationship between our attendance team and our student study team. One is more about identifying the issues. Then with the student study team, we have a broader group who can bring different expertise, from the nursing staff to our school adjustment counselors to the deans of students are present for the student study team. So that's an exciting thing for next year. That ninth grade transition, again, we'll be revisiting the school growth team. So the ninth grade school growth team will begin to meet again in the year to come as part of the social emotional learning. What are the things that our ninth graders specifically need to use during our extended homeroom time? Extended homeroom was something brand new to us. We did it this year and we did it the year before, but this will be the third year. And now we're able to develop things that are more specifically geared to the ninth grades. They need different things than the upperclassmen do. Tier 1 support to help ninth graders access the curriculum in the classroom every day. That's that 80 to 90% that Melissa talked about in her presentation. Those are those interventions and strengthening those. I've taken some notes from Lynn's work at the middle school on UDL and how that can apply to help us here. We haven't started that work yet at the high school, but it's in the plan now. And then the tier 2 supports I mentioned earlier, and they're repeated here to help with the ninth grade transition. And then finally, sort of ending with something that's really important to the staff and to the students of Gloucester High School is creating an inclusive and equitable school climate and culture. So some of the steps, again, I wanted to link back to the culture responsive teaching that I began with, right? That's an approach to teaching. It's also an approach to creating a school climate and culture in which teaching and learning can happen. So you see the bookending with that concept. The next slide shows work of the racial equity team. Work that this year, again, in the midst of all of this, we were able to begin meeting with student representatives of the racial equity team. And one student member will actually be helping us choose the next Dean of Students tomorrow, in interviews tomorrow. That was something that was really important for the team, is hiring practices and make sure these values are represented in our hiring practices. And then in the last slide I wanted to recognize the continuation of the work of Saga and the sort of work they're doing near the end of that will be continuing. An example is we had a faculty meeting in which we had a representative from DESE and former Gloucester High School student and current Gloucester High School students do a presentation called Trans Welcoming Classrooms. And that was something we wove into a staff meeting toward the end of the year. It was really, it's a really great activity and raised a lot of awareness, some important vocabulary for our staff to know and how to, terms to use in talking with trans students in our school, and also best practices for supporting trans students in our school. We have, again, as a budget decision, we have an English learner liaison position now. We're able to hire that position, a full-time position, to help liaise between the school, students and families, which is really exciting to have for the year to come, to help us with inclusive and equitable environment. And then particularly our English department, in working with our students who raised funds through the Art for Equity project that many folks here supported. We had a presentation right here in this library of all the books that were purchased. Some of them are for core curriculum adjustments that we're making to have a more diverse English curriculum, and others were for independent reading projects that were woven into our literacy classes. So that will be implementing those books in the year to come. So that's really exciting too. That's our plan. I cut a lot too. I was getting in the weeds there. It's like, okay, it's gonna be late by the time I'm talking.
That's great.
Yep, Joel?
So one of the slides that caught my eye was obviously the one that spoke about attendance. And that, and speaking of Greg Bach and having a very specific, that seems to be, you know, a lot of bang for your buck if you can solve that issue as far as, you know, the likelihood of improvement school-wide, right? And so, you know, that's my personal prioritization. But I'm interested to hear from you, you know, the triage, the tiers of, you know, of all these problems we have to work on. Like, you know, we can knock these ones out early, it'll set the stage for tackling the other ones. Is anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, so two ways of looking at that, right? One is how you framed it, which is when the kids are here, they learn. Right? You know, teachers say this all the time. It correlates with data that we have about student success. You know, especially in terms of passing and doing, you know, well enough, right? That sort of thing. So that's one thing. We need them here, and so learning. So a priority this year is to make sure we don't have all the expertise in that area. It's not something teachers may have the most expertise. So working with Attendance Works in a collaborative way to maximize our improve our expertise and also get help from others on this is really important. The second way of looking at that is it's one of the elements that we have some locus of control, but we have less locus of control than we do in some of the other areas, right? So it is fundamentally important, and we're putting more emphasis and resources into it than we have in the recent past. But there are aspects of it that, if you know this from Attendance Works, and you've heard Greg talk about as well, where there are patterns already in play by the time they get to Gloucester High School that are very difficult to undo. So we want to make sure we're doing well in all the other areas, right, as well. And we believe that with the social emotional learning, with improved relationships, and we have a focus on relationships for learning partnerships, along with the support of Attendance Works with our policies and communication with families, we'll be able to we'll be able to do what is in our control to improve attendance. But we also know that some of it is not in our control.
And one more piece of that is and so I look at it not a different way, but I think is what are the external factors that are keeping them from attending? But also then what are the internal factors? You know, what is it about what we're teaching or how we're teaching or how we're building relationships, or, you know, what are we, if anything, what are we doing to make school more of a push out, you know, push kids out rather than, you know, pull them in. And so that's what, you know, locus of control, it's the same thing. The factors that are outside of just the school's control is where we do this, you know, the campaign with many partners across the city, mayor and agencies and sort of stuff, because they're perhaps better positioned in other factors that are, that we can't.
And our health department
Health
is doing
department,
this. Sorry, I should have said this as
Yeah,
part of
health
the.
department's involved and literally.
District attorney.
Yeah, and Mass Partners for Youth, we're working with it. So there's a broader, Department of Health is putting together a broader framework, which will be obviously, you want to make plans on, but that's the other way to address those factors that are outside of the school's control, but other folks can possibly.
And I would highlight, just as you said too, in terms of prioritizing, right? I see things like if our instruction is focused on meaningful thinking and applying your learning, it's a better environment to be, right? There are more things to bring a student in, right? When you're engaged in learning that feels meaningful to you, right? That's where vocational instruction comes in. That's where all the diversity of specialization we're able to offer in the school across the curriculum, to make sure we're doing the best we can to offer the things that make kids want to come and learn. So it fits, the other elements fit.
We're also starting at O'Malley, the DA's office gave us $50,000 grant to actually look at that and what's happening and what's, and the actually superintendent and with the principal went to other schools to figure out how are their plans work and what it is. Because sometimes it might not be because the kid doesn't want to come to school, either they can't or there's a reason, and let's help them. So, I mean, we're starting at a younger level to find out what's happening, because a lot of kids have been at O'Malley School. Some of them, we don't know their circumstances or why they really can't attend all the time and what's happening. And so we're trying to focus on that and trying to help them. And though the money was not for salaries, so we can use, the Board of Health and other partners to do that, it's for other things. I mean, at one school, they bought them, like in the classroom, they had economic, they bought them wash and dry, because one kid, when he wouldn't come to school because he didn't have clean clothes.
Along those lines, because I know Sam has a question too, knowing what I know during, what goes on during my day, I know why a lot of kids aren't in school, and I can't help but wonder if we get the community police involved as well, because they're so close to what I do, which may help reach out to families as well. So I'm wondering if you're willing to.
The community impact unit?
The community impact unit,
Absolutely.
yeah.
They're already ready to go on board.
Yeah,
like
I mean, they have
said.
ACE anyway, but I mean,
Yeah.
just for the
Yeah,
high
it's
school
not just
level
ACE,
kids.
they're actually, Ed Conley has a more plan. We hired another person to be with that team to focus more and, with the, they call it Happy Valley, to go with more resources in the elementary to talk to the students, to help out, because this is, we can't start at the high school anymore. It's not like when we were younger. You have to start the lower level, unfortunately, and you have to really get with the basis, because we're diverse. And like I said, some of those schools, they didn't have clean clothes.
Right.
They were too embarrassed to come to school. It didn't have it's what's happening. We don't know. And
I
we
just
wanna make
remember
sure-
sitting in the courtroom with Judge Harrison, God rest his soul, would actually talk to high school kids and say, I will pick you up in the morning at 7:30
Yeah.
and get you to school.
Yeah,
Is that what you want?
exactly,
And they'd say
exactly,
yes.
Exactly.
So anyway, sorry.
Back then you had the chint, that didn't work. We tried everything in the state, and sometimes, it's not the right place or the right time, and now it is. And so we're starting younger again, so.
Good to know.
Samantha?
Thank you. So one sort of critique that I have of the district as a whole is that there isn't like a real solid golden thread for social emotional learning between every single school, right? Like every elementary school kind of does it a little differently based on their culture, based on their staff. I would like to see there be a little bit more of a common thread. Would you say that between O'Malley and the high school, there is sort of a partnership and a common language and a common approach to social emotional learning, so that when you're getting the kids transitioning from 8th to 9th grade, they're familiar with sort of your approach?
I think I know that that's part of this work, and it's part of the design of our school adjustment counselors meeting for regular consultation with each other, right? So it's not only just talking to Amy Cam about this, school adjustment counselor at the high school, how, a lot of the consultation might be focused on individual students, but also, right, there's an interest among them about doing taking a systematic look. So one of the things that came up in a consultation was how the particular program used at the elementary level doesn't have a good product for the high school level.
Yeah.
but that a product we're looking at now is compatible with that, but speaks more to high school students.
Sure.
So there's an eye among particularly our school adjustment counselors on keeping an eye on that thread. And if they're meeting more regularly and having these discussions with each other that aren't just about feedback about individual students, but are also planning, which is something they've
A global
begun to,
perspective
yeah, which is
on
something
the
they've
whole
begun to do. That's really exciting, because then when I'm talking to Amy, she's bringing in that little piece of information that I just shared here tonight about the what's used at the elementary not having a good product for the upper levels, but then what we're picking is something that's compatible with that in common language. The other part of that is the the ongoing conversations that Lynn and I have about everything from culturally responsive teaching to universal design for learning approaches, to our approaches to the ways that we can bridge from the sales approach of the middle school, and what does that look like at the high school level, right? So we're not going to have sales at the high school, because one of the things that happens to 8th graders, folks may know, is that that's a middle school thing. So to bring it into the high school would have all, right? But we can do it without doing it, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Without
what,
calling it
right, without
sales.
calling it that, right? But have those principles embedded in the social emotional instruction lessons that were referenced in that slide. I don't want to say too much about the products we're looking at right now, because it's still early days, and we're vetting and so on, but those are things we look at. Are these compatible with where the students have come already? And how do we know that? We know that because the SACs are collaborating with each other and able to bring that perspective into the decision making, which is exciting.
Just to add, part of that thread you're talking about, Samantha, which I really agree with, it is just a conversation, the work that James and Amy and I have been doing recently about that, exact pieces, what sort of level of coordination and not, Amy's been doing a great job in sort of ad hoc way, in a very good ad hoc way, to coordinate and pull them together and everything. But the question is to be, to what extent do we need something that's a little more just formalized to support them and to create threads, and then also trying to balance that with how do we plan for that, put some things in place and not have it just be a thing we're doing that's laid on top and isn't built on strengths, isn't built on what we're doing. So that's the work this last really few weeks as we're planning ESSER dollars and expenditures, and also coming out of the pandemic. How do we use the opportunity of such need to really ramp up towards sort of that sort of approach you're describing. So we're definitely in working on that, and I know that Amy feels a lot of support from both of us in that as being a high priority, I think higher than before, perhaps.
Thank you.
As I said, tell people we have 2 goals, right? And that's one of them, right? Essentially, right? In terms of how we group things. So that's how important it is.
Anything else?
Awesome to have a mental health expert on the school committee.
Yes.
All right.
Well,
Yes.
I could speak, I could listen to James talk about instruction and social emotional wellness, but particularly instruction all day long. And in the beginning of the year, for half the year, every Friday afternoon, just about, we found ourselves talking for half an hour or 40 minutes or an hour about these exact things. So, so thank you, James, for being as thoughtful, but also as strategic and planful and proactive in leading this work, because it is to a level that a lot of high school, I've said it before, a lot of high school principals aren't at, but you certainly are. And it's the most important piece is what you guys are focusing on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. And thank you for the opportunity to do this.
Well,
Thank you.
Wrap up the year.
I think we need a motion.
Done.
We do need a
Start
motion.
tomorrow. We're gonna
Yeah.
Start tomorrow. No?
We need a motion to accept the school improvement plan.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Congratulations, great work.
Good luck.
Okay, roll call vote, Maria?
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Mayor Chapin,
Yes,
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Fuson,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Cavazza.
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much, James, and you've got your work cut out for you.
A lot of work to do, for sure.
But enjoy your summer.
We live in Gloucester, it's the best place to have a summer, right? Even if you have to work,
Sorry.
right?
He is developing for me a robust plan for relaxation for
Yeah.
the weeks of summer.
Yeah.
Right, yes, Corey, it's another plan, it'll be a power plan.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Right.
Some days,
And
so.
change the thing. I see a lot at Plum Cove Beach. I don't see a lot at Niles when I up the Niles of Olympia.
Really, just go away. Thank you.
It's all right.
I see you attending the South Bazaar. You're missing the block party. I think we should get a little block party, you know.
I'll see you at Half Moon Beach then.
Moving on to preschool. Anne Marie, thank you for hanging in there with us tonight. For the last meetings of the year, we are getting our work in.
But it's great to be in person.
It is great to be in person.
Very productive.
It really, really is. We're just gonna put it up in a second, you'll see it, and then we're good to go, Anne Marie.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's showing food. Rice tea, bowl of rice.
Open it.
Yeah, open it with, at the top, it's
Oh, yeah.
open with.
Yeah.
And then whatever the.
Try,
Docs.
no, actually, no, you should,
Download it.
If you download it. then
Yeah,
it'll
go
back
back.
up. So stop sharing your screen for just a hot sec. It'll be a lot easier for you.
Thank you for all the tips.
No problem.
Wasn't your fault. Well, you have pushing the button, so it wasn't bent.
Yeah, download it.
It's a PDF. You're okay. It's only 5 slides.
that's good.
It's all right.
Yeah.
All right, Anne Marie, take us away.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Amazing.
Thanks for having me tonight. This is the first time that the preschool has been asked to develop and present a school improvement plan. So thank you. I do want to.
You're welcome.
Anything else we can do?
I do want to stress, though, that because of this, we don't have a school site council as the other schools do. And because this was our first and it was the end of the year, this was a document that, so primarily I put this document together. But I do want to assure you that it is based on a lot of discussion. As with the other schools, a lot of it is focused on how we come out of the pandemic and some of our changed and reduced learning time during the pandemic. And so how do we really look at what were some of the losses, were there losses, and how do we address those? So that is what the focus of this is about. And it's also based on a lot of discussion that preschool staff has had over the last several months when in looking at when we go back to normal, what are we going to be looking for? So that is the basis of this. The other this plan is really that it's based on a foundation of the preschool's priorities, which is to be a strength-based approach to education and to provide a supporting environment for our students and our families. Within that concept, we make sure that two-way communication is key. Two-way communication is between classroom teachers, between teachers and specialists, between teachers and students, as well as teachers and families. We really do believe that this is for many, if not most of our families, this is their first introduction and first exposure to school as a parent. And so it's really important for us to start off on a good foot with our families and to really make them feel welcome and part of that process of public education. We also have had a lot of conversations about the importance of comprehensive collaborative professional development and that is key and really needs to be strengthened so that we can improve student outcomes at the preschool. So based on that, there are three primary objectives in the school improvement plan. The first is related to student growth and achievement, and really based on our instruction, we really want to take a strong focus this year on looking at assessment and where students are at. So we will continue to provide, as we always do, students exposure to a range of early literacy and numeracy, math concepts, social skills concepts, and opportunities for gross and fine motor skill development. And as we always do, through activities and play, as well as through structured programs such as Lively Letters. And then using our the variety of assessment tools that we have to make sure that we provide assessment continuously throughout the year, and that we look at targeted interventions to address the gaps in learning. We have, as I mentioned, we have multiple modes of data collection. We are a special education program, so our teachers are and specialists are adept at assessing and through formal and informal modes of data collection. And we have a unique team meeting model. And through that team meeting model, we will really focus on the dissemination and analysis of that data, problem solving, and then decision makings on interventions that are needed. And then classroom teachers and specialists do and will provide classroom supports and interventions for students who need those supports and interventions. Our second objective will be growth in professional practice. There's been a lot of discussion. The district provides continuous professional development to staff throughout the district in all schools. But we really focused on the idea that the growth in professional practice really needs comprehensive and collaborative professional development. And that we really wanted to look at our professional development needs in that comprehensive approach. And so we did have several meetings this spring, late winter into early spring, regarding professional development and what that means for the preschool. And there were volunteers who agreed to join our professional development team. So we now have a newly developed professional development team that will be working this summer to look at our needs September through June. And that group will develop a comprehensive PD plan and calendar that we will implement throughout the year. And then in June, make sure that we evaluate the results of that PD. That would be through staff surveys, as well as just conversations through our common planning time, as well as staff meeting time, to determine whether our professional development team this year really hit the mark. And then continue our plan for the following year, building on that. Our last objective, and I know this is a theme throughout, but really focusing on social emotional learning and community, that we will strengthen our school culture through increased classroom interventions, as well as school-wide programming. Our teachers do a great job of implementing, as the elementary schools have done over the years. We have invested in the Second Step program, which is a research-based SEL program, prevention program. It is in all of our classrooms. Our adjustment counselor also works with our teachers to help sometimes co-teach lessons, provides consultation, provides extension activities for the curriculum. I would like to see us expand that consultation time with our school adjustment counselor to ensure that teachers have the tools that they need to not only implement the curriculum in the classroom, but also to extend it through other activities and programming. I also think it's important, and we did have some conversations this year regarding doing classroom inventories to make sure that we have toys and literature that support social emotional learning and social skill development in preschool. Social emotional learning and social skills development in preschool is extremely important. We really are the beginning foundations of all of that social emotional learning is based on. It's extremely important. We identify that, and we really want to take this opportunity this year to make sure that we're building on what we already have in place. We also want to make sure, as you know, we were able to, at the preschool, to really provide students with comparable classroom and specialist hours as we had done pre-pandemic because of a kind of how we reconfigured our classrooms. However, we weren't able to provide the same level of family support and engagement that we normally do. And so it's going to be really important for us to reestablish and expand those family support activities and school-wide events so that we can really provide that family involvement and that two-way communication that we think is so important between school and families. We have a variety of programming in the last 2 years. Our adjustment counselor and our special education program leader has been trained with Pathways in family support workshop, which is called Strengthening Families. We really like the program. Pathways has implemented that training series over a number of years. We did start offering that in conjunction with Pathways before the pandemic. We would like to reestablish that and actually expand it this year. We find that families really appreciate and find a lot of benefit in that family workshop series. We also have had in the past, through a collaboration with Wellspring, a family dinner every year at the preschool that has been extremely successful. It's an opportunity for us to invite all of our families and our children to come in for an evening to sit down and have a meal together, get to know each other. That is normally something that we have in the fall. Wellspring provides the food for us, and they also provide information to families who are interested in WIC and other types of nutritional support. And in fact, the last year during the 2019-2020 school year, they also had a family farmers market there at the same time that we had the family dinner. It was a great activity. We've talked about expanding that and offering it at least 2 times a year. We would like to do that this year as well. And then also to make sure that we continue our inter-school and interagency involvement. James's conversation about school adjustment counselors, the preschool adjustment counselor has been involved in that, those meetings and opportunities. It really is something that the adjustment counselors, as well as preschool staff, feel is very important. We know that we have a variety of families who have children at all grade levels. It's important for us to know what's going on, who's going on to which school. That inter-school collaboration is really important. And then also to make sure that we reestablish our interagency involvement. That includes with Pathways, which we have a strong history with, as well as with KP Early Intervention, Wellspring, Open Door. Those are really important connections that help support our families and help support our staff. I will stop at that point. I think that's my last slide. And if anyone has any questions?
Questions?
I have to turn a light on. All of a sudden it's getting dark. Sorry.
No.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So,
I want to add something, which is Anne Marie was very kind in just explaining that she hadn't done one of these before, in the sense that I just sort of, not offhandedly, but just sort of, talking to my principals and said, we're going to work on school improvement plans, and this is how we're thinking about them, and what do you think? We had a conversation. And then a couple of days later, Anne Marie came to me and said, preschool's never been asked to do this before. And I was like, oh, okay. Not realizing that. And, but she was game, obviously, and I think did a great job. And I think, one thing in looking it over with Anne Marie and talking with her about it was, just, her objectives are so crystal clear and are so the right ones. And that's, in terms of the, student growth and achievement and learning and really focus there. But then also the growth of the practitioners and the teachers and staff, and how they work together to get better. And then obviously social emotional learning. And I think, what's nice is the district is at a place, and that's because of work that's, has been ongoing for a while, where you see a lot of consistency in what folks are trying to do. Really dig down on instruction and student achievement, and do that in a way that's collaborative and data-based. Make sure folks are working together to get better. And then also a real sense of caring and concern about the social and emotional well-being of our students, knowing that's a foundation for learning. And we see it in preschool and right through K-12 as well. So I really appreciate that a lot. So thank you, Anne-Marie. Thank you for being game as always, and for just playing along. Appreciate that a lot.
Samantha has a question?
Anne-Marie, I seem to remember at some other meeting, you elaborated nicely on sort of your thoughts around a full day model. I can't seem to remember exactly what you said. Could you please speak to that, whether or not it's a goal of the preschool or what the barriers are?
Sure. So the complication regarding full day classrooms, we would love to have children full day. We actually did, and we can't connect this year with a typical full day. We actually did have children in full day 2 days a week for our half day sessions. There were pros and cons to that within the context of pandemic, but within the context of normal times, we have 3 full day substantially separate intensive special education classrooms. We do have 1 full day integrated classroom. There are tremendous benefits to a full day classroom. However, the challenge for us is that we are a special education program. So we really are required to make sure that we have the space to accommodate all of our children who come in with IEPs. So in order for us, so when we have a half day session, so we have 4 teachers who teach half day sessions 4 days a week. So they have 2 classrooms a day for 4 days. If we were to make each of those a full day classroom, we would need additional classrooms because we would need to be able to accommodate all of the children with IEPs. For a little bit further clarification, the reason that those classrooms, because they're integrated, there are very specific ratios that we need to have in order to consider a classroom integrated. So there needs to be a certain percentage of children with IEPs, as well as a certain percentage of children who are developing typically for the age. So we can't just accommodate the children with IEPs. We need to assure in an integrated setting that there are adequate numbers of children who are peers for that classroom. So in essence, we just need more classrooms. So
when we're thinking about the purchase or not of the preschool building, this is something that really weighs into that consideration. My kids go to preschool in Manchester because that's where I live closer to Manchester. And there's a whole bunch of kids leaving some of the private preschools to go to the public preschool because it's a full day model. Now that they have enough space because they're rebuilding. So other districts are doing it, and I think some are preferring to go to the public preschool just because it's more conducive to working parents. And I think it's, that's the one sort of feedback that I've gotten from the community in my sort of group of friends about not being able to access the public preschools because they just need more hours. So it's just something that I would like to keep sort of top of mind.
To piggyback on that, my children attend Rockport preschools to go through, and there's other Gloucester students who come, and it's similar reasons. So I would love to go to the Gloucester one, but I gotta have them. I gotta drop them off in the morning and pick them up in the afternoon. I can't, do the half.
Right. Thank you for reiterating that. I know that you had spoken about it before, but I couldn't quite remember with everything that's happened in the last year.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Explain to me, we started the preschool because of, we had we had to meet certain criteria.
Yeah,
certain things.
it's a special ed program that we have to provide.
We have to provide the special ed, so, there are other places that do have full-time also.
I think the
Should we-
YMCA will.
Well, the YMCA is
But-
building one, but shouldn't we want to focus on what we have right now and make sure that these children excel? And make sure they have the best space and they have the best places and the curriculum and the things they need to excel. Because if not, you're just gonna roll them over until they get, kindergarten, first grade. We want to make sure that we have a preschool, what was set up for, not convenience because, I'm sorry, not to be rude, but not a convenience of an all-day thing, because there's the Y, there's other preschools, there's Head Start programs, there's a lot of programs. And like you said, there's Rockport, there's Manchester and stuff. We have to fill a criteria. In order for us to fill that criteria, I want to make sure we get the best for those children.
But we might not be meeting a lot of kids' needs because parents can't access that program. So there might be a lot of kids that could benefit
Don't
from.
don't they do pre-testing? The children who go to that, don't just say, okay, I'm gonna go to school. Don't they have the pre-testing first?
Early
But I think also,
Early
isn't
intervention.
part of the program to have model students, isn't that here?
Peers.
Yeah.
Right, so peers, so if there are students in Gloucester with needs and they get to the Gloucester preschool and there's a lack of peers that are not in IEPs, we're doing a disservice to those IEP students.
Well, isn't that why we tried to, before we wanted to integrate with Head Start or integrate with other children? And then we said, no, we had to meet a certain criteria. We couldn't do that. When I asked, why didn't we go to St. Anne's to put the preschool there? And we couldn't do that. And we're focusing on a building and not what was in the building. And that's what I just want to say. I mean, we're focusing on, okay, so right away you're saying we need larger classes and that's why we need them, because we need the others. So you're trying to tell me that at this half-day school, we're not having children that excel? It's just,
No, we are, and I think the challenge of getting enough peers was a bigger issue when we were at Fuller.
Yes.
And when we
had
when we
space.
moved and the facilities improved, it has not been, the ratio's been good, right, Anne Marie? That,
I agree, Kathy, that's right on point. We do, surprisingly, we do fairly well with our peer to IEP student ratios because we're a well-regarded program. And there are certain families out there that who have children who don't need specialized services, but are looking for a high quality preschool program. And they have the ability to they just have a need for a partial day program, whether it's there's a parent who doesn't work, or for some families, they may have relatives who live in the area. We have lots of aunts and uncles, grandparents who pick kids up because they share in the childcare. So we do have that ability, but it is sometimes a disadvantage for us not to have more full day programming for those families where it might be a single parent.
excuse me, but when we rented that building and you wanted to purchase that building, you didn't think for the future? We didn't think that we're gonna do full day schools? That was gonna be
Just to-
smaller?
just to sort of, look ahead, is the committee has looked at this at other times. I'll bring back, before the committee starting in the summertime into the fall, what I hope will be a process and pathway towards deciding that once and for all. And this conversation is sort of, is preempting that really, because whether it's full day programming, number of classrooms needed, the balance between, or the need for peer students as well as an integrated program are all parts of that. So it's something, because you renewed the lease for 3 years in the fall, and that gives us now a runway to consider the purchase in a very real way.
But to me, in the sense of the preschool staff, they've been clear, at least the whole time I've been on the committee, every time the lease first purchase issue comes up, is they say, we have some really good stuff going here, but we don't have enough room, which is why the purchase idea is always kind of involves kicking out the admin and taking over their space to try and, bridge that. So this isn't a new thing. They've been clear.
Well, that's what I want to say. You just said your children go to Rockport. She said hers goes to Manchester. So when they say, why are we building a school? Because there's not enough kids. Actually, there are enough kids. They're just not going into our schools.
Preschool for the two
Well,
of us.
Well, preschool have to go to first grade, who has to go to second grade, who has to
Well,
eventually.
but they're not
go
gonna
in.
stay there. That- I mean,
Well,
the-
that's what I'm saying is that you are thinking ahead. We are planning ahead. We are saying that your children will eventually go to, will go
Yeah,
there.
no, mine certainly will, but again, but I don't know the same for other families might fall in love with the Manchester district, or fall in love with the Rockport district, and then their
Yeah,
choice
school
kids.
choice,
right?
exactly, but that's what I'm saying is that we need, because I've been 6 years, we were working on this and prior. I just want to make sure that, you know what, we purchase things or we're saying things that, you know what, we're planning. And that we did look at O'Malley School. We did look at the other schools, if we could fix the school, so Samantha will know and Laura will know. We checked because we were saying, then why didn't you go to the O'Malley School? Well, we checked underneath there, we checked all that. Why didn't we go to the high school? Remember, we used to have preschool there. I want people who are coming in for the first time, listening to a school committee. So when this comes forward is, okay, now you're buying a school that you have to expand again. You know, I don't, why aren't you thinking? Why aren't you making the school that you are bigger and put something there? I want everyone to know. Because the fact is, everyone wants transparency and everyone wants us to go forward and talk about it. We have been talking about this and we have looked at, I'm sorry, Anne Marie, if Ben put you on the spot to do that presentation again, because I heard from you when you came in my office and why we're doing the things we're doing. And we actually talked to the YMCA about their preschool and Kathy was on it. I just want people to understand that, yes, we've been thinking about it. Yes, you know, our children, those children will actually go to the schools that we're building and the schools that we need, et cetera. And I'm glad that you said, you know, you live closer to Manchester, yours in Rockport, but yes, they'll go in school. We want to bring them in. We want to make the best possible schools for our children at the preschool. That's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Anything else on the preschool? Do we need a motion to accept the school improvement plan for the preschool?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Great job, Anne Marie.
Yes, thank you. Thank
Especially on the
you.
spot twice.
And just for the record, Emery had plenty of time to do this, wasn't it? Surprised her with it, but she had plenty of time to work on it, right, Emery? There wasn't any rush on that, right? Okay, all right.
So I wish we heard that before we did his evaluations 2 weeks ago. I really
Okay, we'll call vote, Maria.
Thank you, Emery.
Chairman Coe.
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Ms. Aiken.
Vote, vote.
Yes, yes, yes.
Ms. Watson.
Yes.
Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
And Mr. Proposal.
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Anne Marie, and good luck moving forward.
So a few more things, Maria, if I could present, if I could
I can't
share,
see you on the screen.
I am there, looking at participants.
Oh, yeah.
Panelists.
Panelists.
Tax bill.
I would be paid for a bigger preschool.
Probably, there's no reimbursement.
Yeah, there's nothing.
So, right, but the trick is lobby the state to mandate pre-K through 12.
Yeah.
And then MSBA will cover half the cost of adding a pre-K level, and then the next one gets into preschool.
Absolutely,
There you go. Thanks, welcome.
absolutely.
Right.
10 years from now, we're still having the same
Moving on,
conversation.
because
Yeah.
there's still a ways to go here.
Yeah.
So I've mentioned to you a variety of times about the work we're doing on sort of reflecting on the school year. And so I'm just sharing with you just an update, this is just a flavor of some of the response, some of the results we're getting from our staff survey. We also did a parent survey, which I'll just preview for you. But again, just a preview, just a flavor. So these are questions we asked to ask them. You know, there are school-based surveys, but we asked these series of questions across all the schools. And then some of the schools added a question or two, or in the case of the high school, for their own. So the first one is really what are the positive aspects from this year that we should incorporate. Next one is, you know, in terms of what are things that we should perhaps, you know, let go of, might not bring back. Because of the work this year that you know, see as an alternative or it could be different. Number 3 is about what are things you learned or did differently this year, skills, techniques, knowledge that you want to use more going forward. What worked well with students, what are you thankful for, and what are you most proud of? So I'm just going to go over a few of these and just give you a taste of the dozens and dozens of responses we got. I'm just jumping to number 2 here, which was about, the school year really required us to focus on what's essential, and then what do folks let go of that you may not bring back because you discovered an alternative or found that something that you did before wasn't beneficial as you thought it once was. So I'll just highlight a few. Nice to have not as many interruptions. The sense of focus really we see again and again in the responses, the conversations, in our staff meetings that principals have shared with me, but also in the survey as well. I love the second one here. I stuck to the meat of the sandwich, if you will, but then also that going a little bit deeper. Studying the data, targeted certain areas, and then really were able to individualize for students. You heard that again and again tonight as a real culture and approach we have. I think going down this was I think thought provoking. There's no homework, so folks did a lot of homework this year because of the situation for lots of reasons. And this person in particular is thinking about the equity of that and how it's more equitable in many ways not to have homework, because you're not then advantaging students who have good supports at home by counting so much homework. So it's just a thought at this point. And I thought a provoking one. And then I think the last one there is just in terms of looking and thinking which projects are most essential. But I think the last part of this comment is what I pulled out, which is which of the projects can we make more meaningful in real life situations. And again, you're hearing that in terms of being responsive and engaging, as both Anne Marie and James talked about tonight, is thinking through what are those things that are most meaningful to students and most applicable to real life situations. So number 3, I just love this first one about time management. You learn quickly to utilize every minute, and this teacher was learning about streamlining transitions and limiting wasted time. Most school days are short. Ours, of course, is short, and if we can take the focus and the streamlining that we did this year and continue that same ethic, that same urgency, then it'll help our students quite a bit. Moving down here around technology is I pulled this one out because I thought it was really instrumental, really important, thinking of technology. And this one is about reading and what is possible with kids and they're learning reading because of technology. So they can hear themselves, and then the teacher can check for phonics and fluency in a variety of ways through those recordings or watching it live and going back to those things. And so it wasn't it was a little different twist on how technology is helping not only the kids in the reading, but also the assessment of reading. And then another thing we keep on hearing again and again about is the schedule. Is how can schedules may be different, and what can we learn from scheduling this year that can apply in future years. And one area we've heard from the elementary school is the focus on academics in the morning. Okay, we also have heard quite a bit about really getting non-essential meetings, interruptions from the school day. And then this example was just how to organize this specialist schedule. So in this example, the specialist was working with a specific grade for 2 weeks at a time. And that level of just focus and duration, and instead of once every week, it was thought they could make a lot of progress. It might have been for 2 weeks at a time, but it was one grade and solved that grade, that class every single day. So just again, some things we're learning, but we will be analyzing things more as we go through the summer and in the next school year and continuing to learn these lessons. And then just what are folks proud of? And just talk about special education students and all the work that they did and challenges that some of their students overcame. The idea that vocational students were in early, as you folks pushed for, and we were able to do. And just really, this teacher really proud that that those students, our vocational students, were real standard bearers. And then there are also personal reflections of a teacher being proud about learning to ask for help and accepting limitations. And then another one just proud that he or she made it through, considering everything else that's going on in their family lives. And so anyway, just a flavor for what we're learning and what we're pulling out. But there's a lot of lessons to learn, but it'll take much deeper analysis. And not only learning from where there are patterns, but also some of the outliers too. Sometimes you can, a real gem, it can be in a comment or a thought which a few people had. So we'll continue to do that analysis. And then the family survey, this was put out in early June, again by each school, but with these common questions, similar to what we asked, what should we keep on doing from this year? What should we never do again? What do you hope we can do next year to make in-person school better? And then questions about funding. And the last question is important. It's one of the first steps we've taken more broadly about the idea of additional funding and getting input from the community around where that can be, where that can be put forward. So I just want to highlight that last question just for you to see the options we put in for people to respond to. We also had an open response, other as well. So again, we haven't sorted through this data yet, but it's one of the first steps we're taking in terms of broader outreach to the community about how to focus the additional dollars we have for the federal government.
And when will we see the responses? Timeline for that? I'm not rushing you, just asking like fall or sooner?
August, fall, sort of thing. Just, I don't want to pile too much on that August.
No, I get it,
August
yeah.
meeting, so,
Yeah.
but yeah, over time we'll get to it. And you'll be involved in, you'll get these responses,
Okay,
but then you'll also, of course, be involved and ultimately approve, especially ESER 3.
Through the
which is,
budget, yeah.
due in October, so. Let me just give you a quick update on my entry plan, which is leading into the long-term strategic plan. So really, I'll be reporting my entry findings to you in August. That typically would happen probably, mid fall last year. If it wasn't for this pandemic we had. And then my entry findings will be sort of the first step or lead into strategic planning process, which I expect we'll have complete. And you'll be involved in looking at iterations and giving feedback, and that'll be a much a more broad-based process. Just quickly on my entry findings and what you should expect is really the purpose of that is that it gives me an opportunity to report out to you everything I've learned this year from first just being here and doing all the work, but also listening to folks. Everything from conversations I had with all of you last summer to the conversations I had with high school students this spring. But also looking at documents and a significant document review, but really helping sort of sharing my impressions of where I think things are. That includes giving you an identification of what I think our areas of strength are and areas of improvement. I will review documents and data. Continue to do that. I've been doing it all year long, obviously. But that'll come forward, and then I'll also include a draft process for launching and then completing the street plan. So you'll expect these findings in the August meeting. Okay. And then just so you know, as here, the data analysis will include, not limited, but these are examples of things we're looking at, or I'm looking at, I should say. And that's the examples of the document review. The thing. So it's pretty broad based. It's stuff I've been looking at already, but we'll really can take the time now to dig more deeply into a bunch of these. So, questions about process on that or what to expect? I want to move on to just a couple of one facilities thing, which is the GHS and entryway upgrades. You came to the old entryway, not the new one. So you've got a chain link fence around it. But just to give you an update, so to remind you, this is about rebuilding and improving sight lines, flow, and really control at both schools. It's a two-step entry process where you come in to what they call, they call it a human trap, for lack of a term. Okay.
Usually man trap, that's not
Oh,
safe, that's
vestibule.
trap.
Right. But vestibule, yeah, but it's a vestibule where you cannot proceed past the second entryway without having approval and permission and someone identifying who exactly you are, what your business is here. Okay. And that's an important piece. It's what we have at West Parish, it's what we'll have at East Gloucester Veterans, and you have all been doing the work so that we can make the changes constructed this summer. And that includes reinforced and improved structures and glazing. I'm very purposely not showing you where those things are. But if you want to ask me more about it, it's down in my office. I can go over the plans with you. But that's underway at both places right now. The technology's been moved, the offices are being moved. O'Malley has already been moved, I believe, and they're beginning now. And then high school, because I had a more intense completion of the year, is moving now. That includes James Cook's office, which is quite an endeavor. So that's underway, and at this point on schedule, and we expect it to stay on schedule, but we've been meeting weekly with the project team, James, myself, Lynn, Grant Harris, and we have project manager, DPW, architects, and construction manager, and they are going and will go very, very fast. I'll give you a schedule here. We're on June 22nd, staff moving out of those split spaces, and then you see June 22nd to August 18th, which is not a very long time. Construction, folks move back in week of August 19th and ready to go August 26th. So at this point, no reason to believe that will change, but if it does, we'll know about it. Yeah, I think that's all for my updates and presentations. Back to you, Mr. Hope.
Okay, thank you, sir. We'll move on to committee reports, and we'll start with building and finance. And there will be a number, or actually a couple of motions coming out of building and finance. So
Would you like me to do those along with the report?
just do them along with the. So Gary's here for when you get to the budget, I guess, too.
Oh, Gary. Okay, so from general things, we went over a list of summer cleaning and maintenance and repair work. Ben just went through the biggest items, which are the security projects. There's a lot of exterior painting on the schedule, paving at many of the schools for repairs. So there's a lot of regular work that I think people don't know the DPW does over the summer, but they do a lot of things to take advantage of not having kids in the schools. So that's going on. We finished the year, well within budget because we simply couldn't find temporary, substitutes and things like that. So there were a lot of favorable things. We got around to purchasing some furniture that's been on the back burner and not possible for quite a long time in terms of having money to purchase some upgrades on furniture. So those have been purchased. So we ended up the year and we have a prepay going to special education in the amount of $1,250,000. So that gives us some flexibility going forward, but also that safety net for, an expense that can really get out of hand quickly, depending upon changes in student body. We also have food service that this year was in a tough spot financially, that in terms of revenue versus the costs associated with delivering the food. So hopefully some of that will shake out this coming year as more of the schools will be in person. So there'll be more kids participating in lunch. This year, the high school was probably the lowest participation just because of their schedule, leaving at 10:30 in the morning. The next group would come in at 11:15. So there's really not a lot of swinging by the cafeteria to bring lunch home or to go there and have lunch ahead of time. So those are kind of the general items that we discussed. Gary, you want to take us through the latest and final rendition of the fiscal year 2022 budget?
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, be happy to. And just to remind everybody, this is the last step in the budget process. We'll go over some of the budget changes, very minor budget changes. The grand total of the budget did not change. So the total again, 45,638,897. That has been consistent all the way through the process. Just some budgets have changed either higher or lower, but in the end result, it has balanced out to the total budget as I just reported. We do have budget changes slide. Can that be shown? Yes, thank you. If you can increase that so we can visually see.
Trying, hold on.
Yeah, there you go.
Is that
in our
I'll
packet.
move it around. You narrate and I'll move it so people can see things.
Okay, yeah, so the first change, if you go back to the right, the other way,
Either right.
yeah. Okay, so there was a salary adjustment for the transportation mechanic. That was, we had budgeted a full-time mechanic and we ended up hiring a part-time mechanic that had retired from another school district. And we believe with his experience that he'll be able to service our fleet. If not, well, then we'll go back and try again for a full-time mechanic, but we're going to try with the part-time mechanic, and that actually saves us $29,440. The next item is some teacher retirements and resignations. Some of those teachers were earning salaries towards the top of the salary schedule and will be replaced with salaries averaging towards the bottom of the salary schedule. So we're estimating about $55,800 of savings there. We did have a change in the curriculum instruction coordinator. That position was upgraded. At first, we were thinking to fill that internally, but we opted for externally candidate that turned out to be really what the administration was looking for. So there was a change of $46,233 to increase. And then there was the more significant changes were in special education. We increased the out-of-district tuition placeholders to $705,806. That change was $280,000 and change. That will allow us to, if there are additional out-of-district students, and along with additional out-of-district students are out-of-district transportation, and as well as if there are any increased contractual services for personnel that is needed, that all can be increased from this placeholder of $705,000. So there is some flexibility in the budget for additional expenses in special education. New positions for and replacements and the updated contract settlement for the paraprofessionals that added $132,000 to the budget. An offset was prepaid tuition from FY21. That increased to, as Kathy had indicated, $1,250,000. So that's embedded in the budget. That provided savings of $450,000. Altogether, the special education department decreased by $41,523. So those were the major changes. Again, the total is $45,638,000. This was a challenging year, FY21, and we were able to have some additional savings that we utilized in the FY22 budget. Again, the savings amounted to substitutes that we tried to hire, some paraprofessional positions, school bus monitors, and some other positions that teachers filled the remote academy, but their original positions were not backfilled because of the students moved to the remote academy. So there wasn't as much need for the teacher positions in the regular school. So when you add all that up, that pretty much explained FY21 and how FY21 was used to be included in the FY22 budget. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you have at this point.
Melissa?
Two questions. How much did you say the paraprofessional contractual agreement increased the budget for next year?
I didn't say that specifically.
Oh, I thought you said it was 138,000.
That was a
Okay.
combination thing.
That
Okay.
was a
All right.
combination of things.
Okay, that makes
which-
sense.
Yeah.
Am I,
We've had to add a few special education positions just recently because of IEP meetings and also new students, that sort of thing. So that's the bulk of it.
okay, I thought I misunderstood and I was just trying to do the math in my head. My second question is, I've been watching the Zoom meetings after the fact for BNF, trying to keep up with everything that's going on. But can you tell me what if any, social, emotional, or Title I support is being provided at Plum Cove? Because I didn't hear or see anything, and I know when Tammy Morgan was here, there was, as principal, there was several requests coming from that school to put in support, and I'm just wondering if that school is on the radar for any support going
I
forward.
mean, there's an adjustment counselor there, and a psychologist, and so that.
Full-time, or is it shared?
No, it's full-time, yeah, full-time.
Okay,
Whether or not they have specific, programs or needs, and I can speak to O'Malley and GHS. I can't really go, but they have the same level of staffing as the other elementary schools.
okay, because last I heard that they were sharing, and I just want to make sure we weren't at that level
I think
still.
we added that last year, or the
Last
year
year?
before, more recently.
Yeah.
Not originally when it was requested.
Right, I just remember going a couple of years without being able to do it, and I just wanted to make sure we didn't lose sight of that, but evidently it's been taken care of, so that's
Yeah, no,
great.
You took care of it. It was in place before I got it.
Okay. I don't remember doing that.
Any other questions on the budget? Then we need a motion.
Okay, I move that we approve the fiscal year 2022 operating budget in the amount of $45,638,897. As
Second.
presented.
Okay. And we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I did.
Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote, ma'am?
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Present.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
yes.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
and Mr. Favazza.
Yes.
Can I just say a huge shout out to the mayor's office and the city council for the budget process this year? It was just really good. I didn't feel like it was a struggle. I felt very well supported by the administration and the city council, and it was just a good process considering everything this community's gone through.
I agree.
Okay, the motion carries 6 in favor and 1 present. And,
Okay. And the last item on the building finance agenda was a discussion and a motion on the modular units at Beaman and Plum Cove School. As we've talked about numerous times, and Mike Hale has continued to come to us regularly over the years I've been on the committee. Those modulars are really at the end of their useful life. And it's now time to address them. Speaking to kind of the good working relationship with the city, John Dunn has been in conversations, Mike Hale. So this is the first real sign of hope that these modulars, which I looked through some of the history, and I remember there was a public hearing on our schools, and it was the first time I saw you, because you came and talked about Beaman and what are we doing to address Beaman because of all those things. So we met again today to come up with wording for a motion. So I will make a motion on this, and you can ask questions or discussion. Is that okay? Okay. So I move that that the school committee recommends, that the school committee submits a request to the city administration, and that the city administration and school department work together expeditiously to develop the most cost-effective approach to repairing or replacing the modulars which are at the end of their useful life. So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay, discussion.
Just,
Laura.
the motion didn't specify which schools, does it need to?
Yeah, I thought we added that Beaman and Plum Cove.
Sorry, add that, Beaman and Plum Cove. So, and I'll just give some detail. There's 15 modulars between the two schools. So that's, and
Yeah.
Beaman, I think, has
It's
9,
not-
which is quite a
Yeah.
significant
9 and 6,
portion of their
When
building.
we get them in 2000, 2001?
2008.
Nate?
I got on the committee in 2008. We were discussing getting them, so I think they actually came out in 2009.
And at Beaman, I think when we did West Parish, there were some added. Two
Right, we added more.
more were added.
And there was one already at East Gloucester when I came on.
Yeah,
Half Plum Cove is modulars.
yeah. Yeah. Any other discussion?
No, that school can be expanded, and that school is strong, and that school has a lot of possibilities. And when they planned Plum Cove, they actually did a layout where you could expand because of the furnace and everything else, they did that.
Yeah.
And modulars don't last, and I think they're on their last repairs.
I understand.
I know.
This summer in particular, actually.
I can actually say over the past couple of days, I've been reading through minutes and going back, even, I think the first one I found was in October 9th, 2015, when they discussed the modular conditions, is when Mikhail started talking about getting us to come to a plan, because the intention when we got the modules originally is that they weren't going to last more than 10 years. I believe they were used when we got them somewhere.
Some of the 08 batch were
Yeah.
lightly.
Yeah.
used.
So
Refurbished.
Yes.
Joel,
The wording of this motion is broad. I spoke about this at BNF. I just want to speak about it here. At the full committee, I would just really encourage some really dynamic thinking about, because these modulars, no secret here. I don't like the modulars. They last 10 to 15 years. They take the city 20 years to pay for it. We do a 20-year bond on them, which means, these current ones will be off-site for 5 years, and we'll still be, writing a check every year to pay for the ones that we've already thrown in the trash, while we have new ones doing the same thing, right? So I don't like them. And so I would really hope that we avoid taking on more new ones than we need to. And I appreciate that requires, taking a hard look. I hope it, and, I'm looking at the EG vets coming online fall of 2023 as it's a big enough disruption in our district that there is, room for, to look at redistricting and reconfiguring the way in which we have things set up. And I know that it's tough, but I want to remind this committee, two things. One, this is no surprise, right? We knew these things when coming down the pike. And two, this committee in this district has a history of being able to pull off, in the 90s, we changed junior high school into a middle school. A decade later, we changed it into an innovation school. 2008, we redistricted 700 plus students, 550 out of Fuller, plus all the fifth graders. In 2020, we just reinvented school, period, from K to 12 with, as we saw tonight, great academic results, right? And so I don't think it's, beyond the capabilities of the committee or the district to just look at this. And that might not be, the answer might be, we've got it dialed in and that's the way we need to stay. But I just think it's unfair to the district, unfair to the taxpayers if we don't look at, and off the top of my head, I wrote this down earlier tonight, just like, well, what am I even talking about? And I'm not saying these are like the right answers or whatever, but like having conversations where you go, okay, well, things the way they are now are not the way they always were. As people get worried about change. But when you guys were rebuilding West Parish, I used to speak to Val Gilman, who I think was chair at the time. And I used to say, I don't understand how we're taking a school that had 330 kids and we're building a school for 325. And she'd say, well, Joel, 325 is just the MSBA number. If you add 3 kids per class, 1 through 5, there's another 45 kids you can put in there, right? And that same math would apply to EG Vets, because EG Vets is a 440. You can get another 60 kids if you add, 3 more children per class, right? It's 105 students taken off the table right there that you can pull out of Beaman and Plum Cove. You redistricted them into these 2 new schools we have that were built with as was told to me repeatedly, the wink and a nod saying, okay, it's a 325, but really we can get, much more in here, right? This EG Vets coming online would be the time. And if 105 students or even 80 students or whatever are pulled out of Beaman and Plum Cove, what does that do for the need for modulars? Because as you remember, Plum Cove, Plum Cove was closed at one point entirely. And at another point, it was K1. It was the K1 factory for Beaman. And then in 2nd grade, you went down to Beaman. And that functioned and, was okay. And all that would seem like a change today. It would also just be a reversion to the way those schools used to function, right? And again, I'm not saying this is the right answer or not, but just thinking,
Taking a lot, that's.
right,
Yeah.
Again, I always bring up how much space there is at O'Malley, right? There are districts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that do elementary school K4 and middle school 5 through 8. And we know O'Malley has room to hold another 200 students because it held another 300 plus students not too long ago. And you go, okay, that's a little nervous. And you go, well, look at the Fuller 5th. For 1 year, we had every 5th grade was in their own, they're all at Fuller for 1 year. And that class tracked through O'Malley and tracked through high school with excellent attendance, excellent standardized test scores, excellent honor roll participation. And even, the valedictorian that year when they graduated stood up and was like, the Fuller 5th really galvanized us as a class. It's where we came together a year early. So maybe there's wisdom in that, right? Of getting the classes together in 5th grade. So these kind of things, I don't know if any of the things I've said tonight are actually the answer, but EG Vets coming online is a big enough disruption where you're not redistricting for redistricting's sake. And if that allows us to save, significant money for the city by not replacing, if you go, oh, we get Plum Cove back to K1 and we don't need any more modulars at Plum Cove again. It goes right back to the way Plum Cove used to function as the main building K1. You're saving the city a ton of money and we're not doing anything outrageous. It's stuff we've done before. So I just want to put that out there. I really hope, this doesn't need to, they're not being replaced this summer. I know we're recovering from this pandemic, but there is time still, although it's shrinking, to really think out, what makes sense and do we need to actually purchase another 15 modulars or even another 12 modulars? Is there a scenario in which we get another 4 modulars and go, hey guys, this will carry us through until we do, the Beaman Plum Cove rebuild. And if there isn't, there isn't, but I just think we owe it to everybody to, students, taxpayers, teachers alike, to really think hard about this before we just do the easier path of saying, we've got this many modulars, we're going to need close to this many modulars going forward. And so I
Why don't we have an assessment? Why don't we, that's not a bad idea.
Wait a minute.
The motion is to request the replacement, the motion is the motion and we're expanding this greatly, so.
Well, she put it on for discussion.
Well, it's up for the motion.
For discussion.
The motion's up for discussion.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
This is why I'm supporting the motion. It's supporting the motion because I think there's room to do that within this motion.
Right, that's exactly. We've done a study on the other ones. We've done a study on down below in O'Malley. I was at Fuller 6th and 7th. We did do a lot of changes here and there. But you know what? If we just brush off any ideas, then you know what? We're not giving everyone a voice. And that's what they keep saying. That's nothing wrong. Look at the modules, look at the cost. And exactly, I'm going to tell you something right now. Anyone that's going to order anything right now is going to take 2 years to get here. So you have to do discussion now. It's going to take 2 years to get here.
I want to be very clear on this motion because I asked this question earlier at BNF. This motion is only about the conditions of the modulars. This motion has nothing to do with the educational plan going forward. And with all due respect to everything that Joel has said, from someone who's been on this committee from 2008, you're going backwards. We're going forward. We had the discussions about Plum Cove being grade 1 through 2 or 1 through 4. We've moved on from that and realized that wasn't the plan that was the best interest for the kids. You keep saying we have tons of rooms in our school to add on, and I don't know that that's the case. One good reason for that is because class sizes are smaller. Class sizes are governed by the teacher's contract. Years ago, like I was telling Kathy earlier, when I was in school, there was 35 kids in a class. Now there's 20. So yes, there might be more room in the classrooms itself, but we're still using the same amount of classrooms. It's not like we have empty classrooms. And your comment about tons of room in the school is very misleading to the public, as if we do have empty classrooms to move kids from Plum Cove to the high school or whatever else you were talking at the BNF meeting last week. That is not the case. We have smaller classrooms for a reason, class size. And I don't want to deviate away from that. I don't want to go backwards. I don't want to change Plum Cove. We have been discussing this plan for many, many years, and you come on and talk to us like we've never had these discussions before. They're in the minutes. I just went through a couple hours of minutes tonight to show how much conversation and how much public input we have had through public hearings at every single elementary school to get to where we are today. And your comments to me are regressive. You know, we're going forward. There's different codes that we have to comply with now. If MSBA's codes say that we're going to have so many kids in a class, that in consideration with our teacher's contract that dictates class size and what we think is best, does not lead me to say, I want to squeeze 8 more kids into a classroom, because that's not where I'm going. And I don't want this modular conversation to turn into that. If you want to ask the committee to reflect back on how we got to where we are today and are we still on the right path in our consolidation plans going forward, that's one thing. But don't come on here and talk to us like the work's never been done, because it has, through many different superintendents, from Christopher Farmer to Conley, through Dr. Sapphire, and now through Ben Lemons. We've had these conversations. This is not new. So I just want to be clear. My approval, because I'm going to support this motion, is based on the fact that the modulars are in very bad shape. Some modulars aren't even going to make it till next year as far without needing repair. It's been discussed that it might be a good idea to, instead of buying a new modular, replace them or fix them with stick-built, because stick-built work lasts longer than modular does. So this motion is here before us to find the most cost-effective, which we usually always do on this committee, the most cost-effective plan to the taxpayers to either fix or replace the modulars. We're not redistricting because of the modulars. We're not changing the way we're doing education because of the modulars. It's a discussion about the amount of space we need right now and how do we fix it and keep it safe for the next probably 15 years before we even think of having another school being built, knowing the timeline we've had over the past couple of years to get the 2 that we've had. So
that's what I need to hear.
It's crazy.
I'm not
I mean,
spending money.
we're not
on something
spending
we're gonna
extra
have.
money. We're
And then you're gonna say
fixing
we're gonna
it.
need to merge these 2
Exactly.
schools, because you know what, that's what people are hearing, and that's why they're getting angry. They're going, you haven't even finished one, you're working, someone said, but we're gonna merge Plum Cove and Beaman, and then I hear everyone, now we're having all these discussions.
If we buy new
about-
modulars,
Yeah.
Plum Cove and Beaman probably isn't going to be built before their life expectancy leaves, because that's not anytime soon.
I'm glad
People
you
think
said
it's
everything
8
you
to
said.
10
Okay,
years.
no,
It's like, are you
need to
kidding me?
explain it.
So,
Exactly.
I just want to make myself
No.
clear, because I don't want any of this conversation to lead the public to believe that we're now going to start talking about redistricting in the city of Gloucester. Because in my opinion, that is the last conversation I'm going to have based on the past 15 years of conversations I've had with this committee.
Well, I thank you for that. I thank you for answering it. He has a right to ask, and we answered,
What-
and we did okay, and
I'm not
that's all
asking,
I.
I'm not asking her permission for anything.
No.
She's supporting it for one reason, I'm supporting it for another reason. We're all supporting the motion, right? That's all it is.
Okay.
But it's about modulars, not
Okay,
redistricting.
all
I don't
right.
want
For
a
you.
messy message
For
out
you,
there.
yeah, okay.
Okay, it's not my fault,
Kathy.
don't blame me.
I just want to also point out that the
I don't
intent
wanna merge.
that I'm supporting this clearly, so that our kids have safe places to learn. And also with the acknowledgement that I know that Beaman and Plum Cove are actually undersized the way they are. So I'm not letting this motion be right-sized the schools, because that's a big conversation about art rooms, and it's about special education rooms, and it's about a lot of wish list things.
Yeah.
That's not what this is about.
Thank
This
you.
is about making sure the structures we have are safe or replaced.
Well, I want to make sure that before, do you know how much each modular costs? And you said we need 20, 15, whatever. Just want to make sure that we know that they do last 15 years. For the next 15 years, Plum Cove will stay Plum Cove and Beamon's going to stay Beaman. Because we cannot keep saying we're going to do the modules and then next thing you know, 5 years say we're tearing it down, or we're not going to do that and have it. That's all people want to hear. They want to hear that their children, fine, let's invest in our schools. Absolutely. Let's prepare. But I'm warning you all now, we better talk about this soon and get Mike in here because I hear that to order things are delayed to 1 to 2 years.
That's why the expeditiously is in
Okay.
the motion. So
Well,
that
I'm
we
just letting you know,
if we
my
could hit
opinion
next
about-
summer, that would be best for everybody involved, for the
Let's get that
DPW
going. Let's
and
discuss
for
it.
the kids.
We need to vote so that we can get it going.
I thought we already voted on the motion. That's why we're discussing.
Samantha, did you?
No.
Oh, okay.
We didn't do a roll call? We didn't vote?
We didn't
I thought
vote yet.
We haven't voted yet. No,
We
we're in discussion.
Oh, okay.
Laura, you have anything to say?
As someone whose child was learning in those modulars, they need to be replaced or fixed or improved in some way. I will say that as a new member of this committee, I appreciate both Joel's interest in thinking outside the box. I really do. And thinking about solutions that are cost effective and intelligent for the long term. And I appreciate Melissa giving us some history on how we got here.
We need it.
And so I support this motion to investigate this expeditiously to find the most cost-effective way moving forward.
Okay, this is about the health and safety of students. It's not about changing how we deliver education.
Yes, it's fine.
Joel?
But again, is requesting the city to expend funds to achieve that goal. And I just think it's unfair to everybody to not, to at least take a creative look at it before we say expend these funds, because this is the only way you can do this, is buying all these modulars again. Is to say,
It's
is there?
buy or repair. It's not just buy.
Sure, sure.
It's-
But before we say, hey, city, money, please, buy us more of these things, or to everybody to say, we truly need all of these because X, Y, Z, we've looked at every other option.
Can we move the vote, please?
Yeah, let's.
We discuss things, right? My goodness.
It's not, that's not what this vote is about. This is about modulars. We need modulars. They're falling apart.
Okay.
The one in Beaman is gonna have the wall fall off before the fall.
I
Samantha?
just want to ask a clarifying question. So this is just to do the research and then the cost will then come to us again, correct?
No, well,
No, this is to come up with a solid plan.
Right, but then you said
Okay.
that the cost of it would have to come to the school committee
No,
again.
no, the cost is, the
Cost comes to city.
the plan has to come to the
That's
school
what I mean,
committee,
yes.
not the cost. The
That's right,
plan
the plan.
has to come back to the school committee. That's law. That's state law.
And we have to
That
vote on that.
basically just says we have to approve it. We have to
Okay.
approve any alterations or changes to school buildings.
So when that plan comes forward, it would be helpful if, to sort of support everybody's needs and thoughts around this, that there is some evidence that lots of different things were considered to make sure that this is the most cost effective.
I
Does that-
personally am not, this motion to me and this issue is
Replacing
not about
modules only.
changing our class configuration, our school configuration, or separating our school communities.
I
It's
hear
about
that.
literally solving building issues at Beaman and Plum Cove.
So, but if it's to find the most cost effective way, how will we know that this is the
Because
most
they're,
cost effective
because
way?
they're gonna work
It-
of whether
It'd
it's.
be a question of
rebuild
weighing repair to purchase new. It
Sure,
would be a
okay, so
question of,
That those options will
of
be
do we
presented
need, you know,
as part of
Yeah.
the plan,
Yeah.
so that we know that
Last time Mike talked to us, let's be honest, he said it, he's repaired and
He's
repaired.
been saying it since 2016.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I get that.
We need to look at whether they're refurbished ones, brand new, whatever, we need to discuss that. Ben needs to work with Mike, they need to look at everything that has to be. My concern is if we're gonna spend all this money, okay, I wanna reassure the public that this, where their kids are going. Plum Cove parents asked me, people asked me, they told me, we keep hearing merging, we're not building a new school, we're looking at what we have we repaired, we're doing East Gloucester, we did West Gloucester, we did Central, we're gonna do Central. Now it's Beaman and Plum Codes, just to make sure that they have repairs. Sustainability in their classrooms, in what they need, a module. Maybe the module might be bigger, so you can have what you need to do. We don't know. But the fact is, they need sustainability in their buildings. It's not fair if they're gonna sit in school and have it tick, because it's leaking.
I mean, I
Exactly.
agree. I mean, I think,
And he said his opinion, and I just wanted to hear why they, because you know what? I wasn't on the committee for the whole time. I was on a city council, and what was presented, we voted on, like he said. We knew West Parish, you could put more. We said, why, if you have three, the same exact questions, and they said, oh, you can add on. And and it was justifiable, and she answered it, and that's fine. I just, as a city
So we
side,
haven't done it.
just as a city side, I need to know if we're gonna do this, because I don't wanna spend money and ask taxpayers or whatever to say, we need another $200,000. And then we might need another 200,000 or whatever to expand and purchase or whatever, because technically, if we would have purchased the Blackburn years ago, when you guys really wanted to really purchase it, really, it would have been better off, because the mortgage would have been cheaper than, especially the interest rate today, would have been cheaper what we're paying for rent. But you know what? We learn, we move forward. And that's all I want to do, is just letting you know that we're not going to get them next summer. So we're going to have to do some repairs anyways. I'm going to have to budget that out with, and thank God we have that in our budget to actually budget that out, because we won't get them. So we really do need to have this conversation soon.
And the modulars buy us 10 to 12 years.
Which we need.
Which we need.
Yes.
If there is a long-term rebuild. They're not gonna go unused, because it, just to even get in the
That's all I want.
pipeline and to open and all that.
That's all I want.
It's 10 to 12 years of use and 20 years of debt in the city. And we go to the budget and ask for other educational things, and we can't fund it because we're running out of money. It's because we're still paying debt on modulars that we threw in the trash 4 years ago. We're trying to get adjustment counselors, coaches, and we can't get that in the budget, because debt service for buildings we threw away is still hitting the bottom line. So.
I still.
All right, I'm gonna move the vote.
I still
Okay,
got the money because they need ventilation.
Maria, could we have a roll call vote? Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Absolutely, yes.
Mayor Dakin.
Yes.
Ms. Watson.
Yes.
Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
Yes.
It carries unanimously in spite of everything.
Exactly, money, ventilation, we need it. There you go. No money,
You
no
know,
loan.
it's, I think, I wish I had the number in front of me, but I've been told the projected cost of this is not a fortune. It's a modest expenditure.
What, 2 million?
That's what we have to work through,
Yeah.
is in the repair costs, replacement costs, accommodation two, sort of thing. And that's what, the city needs from us. And city needs from, department, DPW, Michael, myself, our team, to put that on paper and put it in, and be very diligent about what those costs are. And we'll show what other costs are as well, so people have a good picture
Okay.
of what the options are. But I didn't want to interrupt the committee's discussion, but we'll put it in front of you, so you have, clear choices.
thank
Okay.
you. I mean, that's essentially what I was asking for, right? Like, this is just step one, right? And
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
the committee gets a more detailed plan of what sort of.
And
But wait, let's be
Likewise,
clear.
Bob.
What is the plan? The plan is whether we're gonna fix, repair, or replace the modulars. We're not talking about
Okay,
looking
all
into
right.
everything else.
We voted
That's the
this.
plan.
No,
Okay.
it'd be ridiculous to consider all options. You're
We've
right.
already done it, Joel.
You have. I've been in the committee 6 years, Melissa.
Yeah.
All right,
Wait, here's the minutes right here. Actually, I
Okay, all
printed the
right.
one off of,
we want
I
to
can
move
send it to you
on
right now.
to the
send you
naming
the plan.
subcommittee meeting of June 17th.
so that would be me. So on the name committee is myself, Joel, and Kathy. And before I get to my notes, I want to read a policy that we have, because I don't know if everyone's familiar with it, and I think it kind of will set the tone for the discussion going forward. So it's called Naming New Facilities. It's policy number FF. Naming a school is an important matter that deserves thoughtful attention. Personal prejudice or favorism, political pressure, or temporary popularity should not be an influence in choosing a school name. A name with educational significance or inspiration should be chosen. The committee also feels that it is appropriate to name schools for physical locations, geographical areas, distinguished local, state, and national leaders whose names will lend dignity and stature to the school, or significant or pertinent events. The superintendent will prepare for the approval of the committee a procedure to follow in recommending names for school buildings.
Almost standard.
Don't worry, there's gonna be more to come. Whenever possible, the wishes of the community, including parents and students, should be considered in naming new facilities. One more paragraph. It is expected that an orderly announced procedure will lessen the community or factual pressures so quick buildup when the selection is delayed or seems uncertain. A prompt decision will reduce disappointments and advance community solidarity. Much confusion in accounts, files, and records can be avoided if a new school can be identified by name before the planning starts. So that's
That's our policy.
our policy. We didn't necessarily follow this, but I think we're on track with it to some extent. So I'm going to get into my notes a little bit. So I'm going to talk about the who, what, where, and when, and then Joel and Kathy can also chime in on the conversation. So we met on June 17th, which was last Thursday. And we do feel like this is time sensitive. So I wanted to have this conversation tonight because we're trying to get some feedback from the committee to make sure we're on the right path. I can say it was a very robust, positive conversation, unlike the one we just had. It was all talking good, which was great. So the who is the school committee. So who is going to do, first, let me start by saying the policy says that the superintendent will start this process. However, we discussed the school committee doing it and not putting pressure on you, knowing you have so much on your plate that we felt it was a school committee project. And that it was the school committee authority to pick the final name in the end after we get through the process. So I know the policy says you, but we're looking for feedback tonight to see if you want to hand it off to us, if the committee agrees that that's what we should be doing, or join us. Just didn't want to put the pressure to put extra work on you, but more than happy to have many people involved. So like I said, talking about the school committee, we decided that we would take on the project and not put extra pressure on the superintendent. We take the position that the final say of the name of the buildings based on community feedback is with the school committee, according to this policy as well. And that the school committee will act as a filter, was a word that Joel used, to get to a chosen name. The final decision is by school committee vote based on ideas from the public also. So the what is the naming of the school. We're hoping to have a positive experience, open to the community with transparency, get as many suggestions and ideas as possible in a grassroots type manner. We discussed the possibility Joe brought up of having a ballot question, that could be one of the options. We also discussed that it would be too late to get on the ballot this year based on the timeline for that to happen. And like I said, we take the position that the school committee will be the one in the end deciding on the name. The where is here in this community. We want to do as much outreach as we can to the community. Kathy talked about different groups such as the art community, the marine community, school communities, anyone that has an interest in the name of the school, and anyone who pays taxes for this school. And when we say interest, we did discuss the fact that maybe there's some people in Gloucester, working in Gloucester, that might want to be part of the naming of the school, but don't necessarily live here. Like people on the building committee, they don't all live in Gloucester. I think Donna Compton or someone, Crowder didn't live here, but we wouldn't want to prevent them from having the ability to assist us. So the how, Joel gave us a lot of ideas by email in the beginning. There were great ideas. We talked about them. We talked about having 3 to 5 names come to us at some point in the process that we decide to do. Kathy and I came to the meeting with knowledge of Marblehead. So Kathy spoke to a Marblehead school committee member, and they named a school up there and brought up the idea of ballot boxes. And I'll let her talk more about that when we get there. And and coincidentally, I came to the meeting knowing that I do visit Marblehead, and actually took place in the naming of something. It wasn't a school, by doing a ballot box that was put out in the community out throughout Marblehead to name, I think it was like a lighthouse or something that was going on up there. So we talked about the process that Kathy will inform us, but bottom line, we came out with the idea of putting, say, up to 30 or maybe more or less, depending on what's needed, drop boxes throughout the community in like banks, grocery stores, the library, common places, city hall, any business that wants to help us, where we can get some input from the community, just randomly, like when someone visits. We also talked about doing a virtual Dropbox by like an online survey or something to that effect. And Joe brought up a good idea of putting the QR code, you know, those little square codes on each Dropbox that is within the community, that when someone scans it, it brings us to the website with all the information about the new school project and anything else we want to add to it. And I'll let them talk more about the details when they get to talk to, but overall, the idea was to have drop boxes put out in the online survey, as opposed to doing anything formal through a ballot initiative or anything similar to that. So the when is, we decided, I think at least we discussed it. We thought it was important that this school committee be the one to choose the name. We thought it would be fair to you and Joel, because both of you have put in a lot of hard work over the years to get to where we are. And I just think it would be a nice gesture that this committee is able to do that. But at the same time, we talked about if the process feels rushed, we wouldn't want to continue that just for that sake. But the timeline that we discussed, we're hoping that it seems reasonable. But at the same time, I'm sure we can anticipate that there'll be bumps in the road and we may not be able to stick with it. So the timeline was to put this before you tonight, knowing that we're not meeting again until August. I think it's around the August 11th. We scheduled another meeting at the beginning of August because we felt like we had to stop our conversation where we were. We had great ideas coming forward. But we needed feedback from the rest of the committee to see if we're on the right path. But we're going to meet again in the beginning of August. And if you like the path that we're on, then we're going to put our ideas together and come back with a plan to vote in early August, if possible. If we get there. It sounds like we can, because believe it or not, our conversations were great and quick and lots of contribution. And then from there, maybe drop boxes in the community from September to October, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and then come back and then have another process, which we haven't come up with yet. We've discussed it. It's kind of in the works about how we would take all those ideas, those suggestions, and sort them and filter them into different groups. Like if there's a nautical name, if there's a theme, I think Kathy brought up themes. If there's a nautical theme, we'll put we'll put the names according to that theme. If there's a name theme, or we were talking about if there was like a Pepsi theme, you know, like something we wouldn't think of, you know, try to separate the names and themes and then decide how we're going to filter them down. But at the same time, have a public hearing at some point too, to get feedback from the names that are getting put forward somehow. Like I said, we haven't finalized those plans yet. We just want to see if we're on the right path with the rest of the committee before we dove into those. So I'll let Kathy and Joel fill in, talk more about.
So I'll just, so Marblehead did this approach where everybody could drop in an idea or a name. And they got a whole bunch of feedback from the community on names, and then the school committee individuals have looked at the names and then they discussed what resonated with them. So that's kind of where I was thinking, you know, maybe there are themes that some of us are more, that connect with more. And so that helped them whittle them down even further. And you know, at the end of the day, they kind of did a ranked voting to get to the top choices. They had, you know, public input, public hearing, and things like that before they got to their vote. I'm not sure it was 100% received in terms of the name they picked. They said it, you know, never 100%. But I think, you know, from my opinion, having the public really know that we care about, creative ideas or ideas of what a school should be named. I think we're gonna get a lot of really good ideas that might, that, I think that's where it should come from anyway. I think the school communities of East Gloucester and veterans, whether it's, existing teachers, former students, whatever, what talks to them about this new combined school community. So I think by having this outreach, we can just kind of prompt the community as to what the background is, what we're hoping maybe they would think about and be inspired, and they would then put forth things that might resonate with us as to what a new school could possibly be named.
Cool. Yeah, so the thing I would add is that in our discussions, I think one of the things we definitely focused on, and that I know was important to me, and I hope is important to the rest of the committee, was making sure there was community involvement at the outset, especially for contributions of ideas, and to not limit that to just anyone who has a good idea or a bad idea or whatever, it's an idea, right? And then use us as you meant, a filtering mechanism where that's, it gets put out and then we receive it and the 7 of us filter it. And then it goes back out one more time. So, okay, here we filter it down to whatever, we decide we're going to do our top 5 or top 7 or top 8 or top 3, whatever we decide, right? It goes back out one more time to the same community and, and say, hey, what do we think of these? And then comes back to us. And I was actually ambivalent either way about whether we left it with the community to decide or for the school committee. There's sentiment to have the school committee decide it, and I have no problem with that. As long as, again, the school committee, after acting as a filter, goes back out for public one more time to hear from them as to the short list. And then,
So I think one of the things we talked about, to Joel's point, was that we want to give equal weight, but at the same time, don't want, we want to give equal weight so that a group, but no matter what the group is, can't organize and come up with more votes than another. And we may not necessarily be agreeing with that. I know when we went through this at the Tech, Essex Tech, we gave a lot of weight to the school community because they're in the building, the parents, the kids are the ones that are going to the school. So, and rightfully so, because even our policy tells us that, but at the same time, don't want to count, get into the how many of the school community voted this versus someone else. So we're just trying to figure out how we can be equitable and hearing lots of ideas and opinions, but at the same time, don't give it to the name that has the most votes if it doesn't necessarily seem like a good fit, even to us as the committee. So that majority thing is a struggle. And that's what Joel, that's what we were talking about with Joel. And we also discussed whether you should have to give your name on the slip that you put with the name of the person that is suggesting the name of the school. And we decided that anonymous, it doesn't matter because people can just write in anyone else's names. So we were talking about all different little things. We were actually even trying to come up with names. And it's like, wait a minute, we're not here to talk about names.
So I have 2 questions to start. And one, are we prioritizing the East Gloucester vets community? The people who've gone to and who will be going to the school in any way?
So that gets to the point of, you don't mind me responding. So we're trying not to give extra weight, but when, of course, we're going to put drop boxes at the school, let them do whatever way they want to. But other students could come up with ideas too. We talked about how the high school came up with the Great Cops for Kids logo, so you never know what ideas can be generated no matter who it comes from. But at the same time, I understand that
Just
it
wondering.
seems right to do that.
And then the second part of that is, of course, there's a substantial amount of members of that community who are not native English speakers
Mhm.
and who will not be participating potentially. If we would need to be very careful to make sure that this process is really open to people who are not whose first language is not English, who will be attending this school.
So I can say to that, the one thing we did talk about the superintendent being involved with, but then Joel offered he could too, was we talked about doing a survey that goes out to the school communities And as you know, our surveys can be translated into different languages very easily. So that would be a way to capture those types of
I just think that would be
ideas.
a priority,
Sure.
to make sure that this is really broad and, because I think the tendency is that, it's easier to see these signs around town, it's a broader outreach
Mhm.
if we're really trying to reach everyone.
There's also no harm in doing a quick, I'm sure we have the knowledge of what the top 3 language spoken in our households, and there's no reason that the drop boxes can't, if they have 2 sentences, can't have those 2 sentences in English,
Right.
Spanish,
I would prioritize
Portuguese,
that.
whatever, whatever the next one is, right?
And that kind of gets to the, sorry, Sam, the timeline, like, we need to make sure that that outreach is, is long enough, is broad enough, and is successful.
That's tricky.
But at the same time, we talked about not having it open up for a long time. We got to get the plan out there and known to everybody, but not leave it open for a long time. Sorry, are you going to talk?
So I love the idea of drop boxes all over the city. I'm curious about the logistics around that. Like, where are they coming from? Are they getting built? Are they
Good idea.
going to be locked?
You and your
Are they
kids are going to be doing them.
Like, it feels like a really big project.
Yeah.
So what do you have any thoughts around that? Because I love the idea, but I just don't know if logistically it's doable.
So I don't think we even talked about it. In my head, drop boxes don't have to be, I would hope that the
Be a
message
box.
would be identical, but they don't have to be themselves physically identical. So if building center, and I've had no discussion with them, building center says, yes, you can put one down here, and they want to get a Folgers coffee can and
Right.
put our sign next to it and say, here's some,
Mhm.
old lumberyard slips, write it on the back of the lumberyard stuff and put it in the coffee can, and we're getting these all to the school committee by September 15th, or whatever the deadline is. And, again, making it, Bank Gloucester says, oh, we have this really nice box, or, or we have a, one of those fish bowls just to drop business cards into with the sign. I really think we don't need to homogenize the sign and the information. We didn't talk about this previously. That was in my head. It's just a, offer to make, right, someone has a box or needs a box and provide them one, but otherwise it's just receiving informal slips of paper. Just,
It's just,
I was sort of imagining to reach some of the harder to reach families that might not be going into Bank Gloucester,
Well, that's what the survey is for.
Excuse me, but when's the deadline?
we don't know,
Okay, all right, so.
We were trying to
you just
capture
said
the information
September?
from September to October, if
Okay,
possible,
and the
figure it
schools got
out.
it, so put them in their backpacks and
Yeah.
let them bring it home in all different
Well, we
languages.
can do a survey email to every parent's email too.
And let them bring it home and,
Yeah.
they'll get it back to you. Bring it to your,
Sorry.
Is Ben raising his hand?
I want to understand when it's appropriate for me to chime in here.
Oh, whenever you want.
Oh, yeah.
So I've got a lot of thoughts on this.
Okay.
Like a lot, especially having, constructed a
Yeah.
whole very inclusive process in Brookline on renaming a school that was, it was a significant town endeavor.
Everything in Brookline is
Well, yeah,
significant.
but this was actually renaming a school that the town decided to move away from the name because they identified that the person whose name after was a slave holder.
Yeah.
So it was complicated in lots of ways. So, and we haven't talked about this yet. We haven't discussed it, that sort of thing. So a couple things that are really important to me are that East Gloucester and Veterans School are involved in a significantly substantial way. And I think of that as, maybe they're the ones vetting the first round. Maybe they're the ones constructing the boxes, the kids, that sort of thing. But really having them in a very significant way, participating students and families, and also folks who attend those schools, as well in the past.
So just so you know, Kathy brought up the idea of when we get all the names coming in, that we have teachers from both schools and student from both schools helping whoever it is that's gonna gather all the information, make it a big public event, but have the school community of those two schools involved in the process.
Great example, and just, we can go even deeper on that, and
Right.
how we.
I think we're gonna go back to the policy and have you come up with that.
Get to that moment. And then another piece is the timeline really matters a lot.
Mhm.
And I'll just be very direct, is I understand wanting to have Joel and Jonathan involved, and I appreciate that goal and that value. But really, for me and our staff, and I think this committee as well, the focus this fall has got to be on two things, I think. One is reopening school and doing it very well, and making sure we are paying attention to kids who haven't been to school and families who are still not quite there, and supporting them very well, and being very focused on that. And the other piece is long-term planning. Okay, that's something that the strategic planning is hugely crucial. I think that has to be an inclusive process in a variety of ways, which I will present to you a plan for how to do that. I don't see that, I don't see the urgency that many other folks are seeing in terms of naming the school. I do want it to happen next year. I would like it ideally to have it by the spring, whether that's April or May or March, that sort of thing. You know, I think April is a good time to have it decided by. But I think December honestly is too much too fast. Because what that would require is a whole bunch of work this summer to get up and running and doing, and I'm not sure who does that work yet. Because I appreciate that you folks want to, but you are really hampered by lots of things. As soon as the three of you talking about something, it's a public meeting. And that requires a lot of other stuff to happen to make it a public meeting. So anyway, those are my initial thoughts. And I'm just happy to talk about it further because I think it's a super important process. And it's super important that it's inclusive, a lot of people involved. And it takes a lot of work and thinking and planning to do it. And those are my priorities. So how do we do it well?
Joe?
So to push back on the timing, well, I want to be clear, I think it's very gracious of Melissa. I'm not advocating that I have to make a vote on this. I have no ego in this, but I'm happy to do it. You know, but you could literally on inauguration day, vote in the new slate of officers and take this vote. And like, I wouldn't be upset about it. But the urgency, and this is, this is anecdotal, and this is my dealing with the citizens and neighbors of Gloucester in my line of work, is that the longer a plan sits out there, the longer resentment, anger, and opposition festers and grows. The shorter you can get to a vote, the more likely you are to one, prevent festering of negative feelings, and two, begin the process of recovering, right? So when I go in in a neighborhood, this thing is a 6-month process. Those neighbors hate each other for the rest of their lives. If I get it done in 6 weeks, they might be upset, but they can start working to like get back along with each other despite whatever happened. And so my nervousness would be this becomes a long process that stretches out 9 months.
I don't mean August till May. I don't mean that, but just, I mean, starting later. Like I think starting this summer and early fall is very, very helpful.
Well, the other part to that is my last part is, well, I appreciate that like you and the staff are going to be super crazy busy.
We're not.
I don't think we're going to be as nearly as busy as we were certainly last fall as a committee. And also, the other part of this, and maybe I'm being totally naive, and please absolutely slap me down if I'm totally missing this. In my head,
Wait, I got first lap.
Yeah, in my head, this isn't, it's an important thing, but the reality is like getting drop boxes out is
quick.
Is a weekend of if we have to make some of getting them, it's solicitation and it's like very easy word of mouth. Like, managers of these stores will be very quick to say, yeah, you can have one, or no, you can't have one, right? Then they sit, right? So then for 4 weeks, they're just sitting. We're not doing anything in the process, but and they're just churning, right?
No, you gotta do a lot of ongoing communication every single week.
What?
Otherwise, they just sit there, no anything in them.
Or they fill up and the people at the store are like, well, I'm not gonna, like, I'm not.
No, we
dealing
can
with
check
this.
up on them.
Yeah, again, none of that seems like a heavy lift to me. That's like, making sure that we're active on Facebook and that's
the work. We just need to know who does the work.
That's why I started off by saying we do the work.
You are limited in doing that.
Well, the other piece
You
is,
can't be in a meeting together.
Wait a minute, we can publicize our meetings and come here or go on Zoom in 2.2 seconds as long as we get 48-hour notice.
I think one of the flaws in our thinking is that we do need the school communities involved, which means principals, it means PTOs, it means people on the ground at those two schools.
But wait, now I'm gonna get pushed back because we're just trying to figure this out tonight because we're having another meeting. So we put the drop boxes out, we make the drop boxes, we put them out. While they're out,
Well, who's gonna create the communication as, well, I understand your point. The longer a process is, then it's not so good, right? But that means from start to finish of the actual process, not the planning part of beginning the process,
Fair,
right?
correct.
So all the planning needs to be done well, so that when the process starts, it can happen over a, you know,
Quickly.
pretty
The
shorter
execution.
time frame, a well-known time frame to the public, and so we come to a conclusion. So that's really where I'm hearing that whole planning part as to it, like, what does the communication say? Who comes up with the communication? Who's gonna reach out to Matt Fusco to say, how do we reach your families? Do we know how to reach Matt Fusco's families?
I thought we had an email address for all school employees that we send blasts and get out every day in our emails. I don't understand what that is.
All the websites and all the
Yeah.
communication is back to us. And I'm really trying to say that September and October, whether for school communities and our staff, is not the time, okay? It can be time for planning, putting things into place, okay? You know, but it can't be on execution and delivery. Just really urge us to focus on school. And let
There's
us
also a
focus on school.
campaign, like, not, you know,
What?
right, like September, October.
Yeah.
There's a campaign.
It's campaign and also vets, the vets community is gonna have just transitioned into a new building. I mean, it's just, there's just a lot happening. I totally take your point. Like, there's just,
We're here to take his point. He's asking us back off.
right.
Leave
me alone.
Excellent translation.
Yeah, no, but it makes sense. I
He's
mean,
thinking about his teachers, he's thinking about his students, he's thinking about how it is, he's done it before. He's saying, give me time. You'll let us know, we'll do it, and we'll go forward. Next.
well, can I just say, I think what you're saying, if I'm right, is we can plan, but this can't start.
Yes,
Like, we can, I think personally.
we have to do the work to get it in place.
Right.
Right,
Yeah,
and
sure.
so, but, I mean, we could come up with what you guys have started, Melissa, like.
Well,
You
wait a
just-
minute, because it sounds to me right now like we need to hear from the superintendent, and that's not gonna be until the end of August.
No,
And
That's what I'm
so,
hearing.
which is okay.
I'm working on
Rightfully
July, most
so.
of August.
No, and rightfully
Last I heard,
so.
you were
I
working.
didn't, that, did take nothing of that. You deserve months off. But all I'm saying is it kind of just changes everything going forward. And I know, based on what I'm just hearing so far, I would throw this right out the window and wait till we hear from him, because it sounds like
The idea.
We're not on the right path, which is okay, because that's why we're doing
They're gonna
this.
have to rename a school. People can think about it. Could be a project for your summer school to think what is gonna happen in September. What do we like? I mean, it's gonna be a topic around the city anyways.
Well, it already
A lot of
is.
things.
Let's, I mean, informally, we're all in agreement that I mentioned it to the subcommittee, and I think it has to just be said. There is an option for you to say, you know, we closed Fuller, the Fuller community didn't name a new school. When we rebuilt West Parish, it was just called West Parish. We didn't
Right.
discuss another name. We were rebuilding vets at the same site. We could just avoid all of this and say, this is veterans. It was veterans, it is veterans, it's Webster Street, that's what the school is, right? And then we avoid all of this. Whether it's a lot of work, like Ben is saying, or a medium amount of work, like I'm saying, it can all go to
You can always
no
say East
work
Gloucester vets.
because we are, you know, working on this other important stuff. We just say, you know what? This is Veterans Memorial School. We are tearing down Veterans Memorial School. We are rebuilding Veterans Memorial School. And then it's over.
Well,
I'm just saying, like, that's an option, right?
Can I just
So
say,
there's
like,
1,000 options out
there's a
there.
1,000 options, but I don't think that option gives us sort of the buildup of a community, which is what you need here,
Okay,
right?
okay, that's fine.
I mean, correct, I mean, Ben, you've done this, right? And I know from family what the devotion school meant to people in Brookline.
Thank you. Great.
Yes, so I get that. And it's, I don't know that East Gloucester or Vets, those names have the same measure that did. But I think that it's a really amazing opportunity to build this community. And we don't wanna, like, we wanna get it right. You know, like, we want these communities to come together, to feel invested, to feel excited, to feel, you know, like they're making a statement about the future of.
Well, that they're going forward together.
Right, they're going,
Not-
and that they're making
not
a
parallel.
statement that they have agency, right? So that's why for me, like, just calling it veterans is not.
I mean, listen, I'm not saying
Okay,
that, yeah, that's what's important, that at least just put out there, we talked about it,
Right.
right?
Yeah, but I think you're on the right path. I mean, all of the things that have been said all sound like reasonable approaches. I think you need to heed what Ben is saying about involving the school community or employees, in September and October.
Can I start some more trouble? Can I name the library?
And to build on that, John,
Because
I
there is a
think the
library.
idea
Huh?
is.
There actually is a
what you
library.
have there
I'd like to
about
name it after
work
Brian.
Me too.
Brian Top,
So-
sorry.
So
We actually brought that up.
I think you should
The library should
continue
name it.
and refine it and
Well,
come up with more
I'm
concrete
hearing that we
plans.
probably should
Stop and wait for Ben.
stop,
When he's
because
ready.
he's done a process before. It's not like he's making it up
Yeah.
also, right?
So is
I
that,
mean,
so
if
is that
you
what you're
didn't have
looking
any
for?
experience,
Or looking-
I did it at the tech and it didn't, your process sounds longer than what we did.
Oh,
We
it
had to
been
bring in
longer, but-
two schools
Yeah, I
together.
mean, it had to be longer there, it doesn't need to be longer here.
Well, I say, we brought two schools together that weren't even in communication with each
Right,
other.
right.
Where here they are.
Yeah, and that's different, this, Brookline was not emerging in two communities, you're describing, that is a big deal. But what I was trying to get is that I think the bones are really here, I mean, the approach they're here, it's just about timing.
It's the
for them.
timeline.
Yeah.
So would it be that we'd still work this fall to figure stuff out, but then we'd say, oh, we've come up with the Dropbox plan, and Dropboxes are going out March 15th. Would that be it?
Well, I think
Or
we should
you-
hear
or you
from
think we still
Ben.
wouldn't get to that
Well,
part?
I think, what I would suggest is the four of us work together to create the process.
Okay, and you're swamped, and that's,
Well, yeah, I mean,
so it won't
I
be the
can-
four of us, it'll be the,
No, but just about when we do it, I can do some in late.
So you're asking for more
July,
time.
July,
but you went in on this, what happens, you make an assumption, we assume that we're gonna say, hey, Ben, guess what, we're just gonna cut you out of this, and you're like, oh, thank God.
I
Last thing I need to worry about is the school's name, thank you very much.
Now here you are telling us can't do
Whatever
it.
you decide, it's gonna come to me anyway.
That's right.
Okay?
Thank you.
I mean, it's just, some.
Possible deniability, they didn't even invite me to the meetings, guys, I have no idea how it became,
It's not possible,
I'm gonna get them and forward it to him.
So I think we could come up with a good process, good timeline, and I think we're,
But you went in on that.
80% in place.
You went in on that process development.
Yes, even if that's me trying to keep myself out of it, I'm happy to do that.
All right, so do you have enough feedback? Can we move
Well, I'm
on?
canceling my meeting in August and whenever Ben's ready to let us know,
I
that's,
think we can
we'll
have,
do it.
I think we can have a working meeting in August. to
Okay.
Really attack that.
When are you out?
I'm
The
not
first 2 weeks in August. Hence
So-
the conversation.
Okay.
There you go. All right, do we have enough to move forward?
Yeah, we
on
quit.
this?
We're done.
Okay.
Go, Ben.
Well, we quit. All right, you can't.
We're going back to the policy.
Yeah.
So let me say, we're going back to the policy. So in October, Ben can do a presentation to the school committee on how we're doing this process.
All right. Moving on. We have to approve the summative evaluation of the superintendent of schools. At our last meeting, we evaluated the superintendent, and it was, some people expressed the concern that they would like to reconsider after hearing other people's discussion. That has happened. I sent out a calibrated evaluation, summative evaluation. The comments were recorded in the minutes, and so you have it. I sent it out this afternoon, and I will just say one thing about it. There was no everything was increased. Everything, all the changes were increased on the positive side, as opposed to anybody deciding, no, I gave him too high a grade. Should have flunked the class.
I wish most of my regrading options went that way, but.
So,
For the record, I can do anything on it.
do we have a motion?
Can we accept the superintendent's
No, because
evaluation?
like I said, we work differently.
All right.
Approve the superintendent's
Okay, is there any discussion?
Summative, so.
Okay. No discussion?
No, I
Okay.
just want to let everyone know again that I didn't need to, because what I said was publicly, what I said again is that I work differently than you. And what I worked with them was a great teamwork. We did, I mean, you have your schools, we had the city, I mean, we did great teamwork. I mean, for the first time, him jumping on and, seeing a new, never mind being the superintendent of a new school, then you get the pandemic, then you shut down, and then you gotta come to my office. I called them both to my office. And we've been working great, and it's the main concern is the well-being of everyone else. So we had a different relationship. Maybe moving forward, it'll be different to once schools open in September and we don't have a pandemic. And then I can evaluate is what I evaluate on his leadership, and he did a great job.
Any other
Can we all
discussion?
improve? Of course we can.
Maria, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince?
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Weason?
Yes.
Kathy Dempsey?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. We have a couple of grants that we need to accept. Oh, no, we have one grant that we need to accept from Gloucester Education Foundation in the amount of $29,500 to the Gloucester High School Mentor Program.
So moved.
That's great.
And this is mentors for students, not teachers. Is there, did we get a motion in a second? Any discussion?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you again.
This, from what I understand, it's a partnership with Wellspring, and Wellspring has been doing some mentoring. This expands that.
Some mentoring, right, and the work it's going to do this spring was Aria and Craig Bach and others meeting with students to learn from them what would be helpful in mentoring, so they can design a program from those conversations. So there's been a lot of work into students about development.
Any further discussion? Maria, could we have a roll call vote?
Chairman Pope?
Yes.
Ms. Prince?
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson?
Yes.
Ms. Weason?
Yes.
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 Okay, we'll move on to the East Gloucester Veterans Memorial School Building Committee update. There's a meeting next week. They submitted the 60% design development to MSBA, or they will be. That's what we'll be meeting to approve. Today they did the reconciliation, and reconciliation is they take the design development at the point where it is, and they bring in the estimators and just check to see if we're on track. And because if we've gone over budget, then they have to make adjustments. We have to make adjustments. I don't know. I was looking at what they sent me, and I couldn't figure out what it really meant. It looks to me like there's like $1.6 million difference.
Yeah, but I don't want to share numbers yet because it's in flux.
Yeah,
They're in
it's-
process, but I'd like to report out what they shared, what we discussed at the school building committee. 2 weeks ago, after our last school committee
Yeah.
meeting, which was, as folks probably have heard, lots of changes in cost of materials. Now it looks like lumber might be going down, in the near future, but still certainly high. So they expect that they're working through the two estimates again from the owner's project manager and from the construction and from the design group. To reconcile those that they're working on today. From that, once they reconcile, they come to agreed upon numbers for each of the different parts of the design costs and construction costs, sorry. Then you'll see if they need value engineering. It's likely we'll need value engineering, which means making modifications to the design or materials often, because they'll be higher than they were. Remember, we were right on target 4 months ago. Now, because of the changes in cost of things, we will be above target probably. But there continues to build in, and so that's the work of the building committee in the next week plus to just make some of those decisions to get it back down within the cost, basically. We're just beginning that process.
What is the timeline to start building the school? In other words, I'm just trying to think, keep buying the materials. Is
Yeah,
it,
so-
how is it
so
6 months
they
out?
do
or-
different bid packages, different
Yeah.
times, and steel is the big one, obviously.
Yeah, we had that at the
And-
tech, it went up.
and really, people are expecting steel is going up, expecting it to go down. When we do the bid packages will actually matter a whole lot. So
Right.
there's a bid package in August and then another one, I think, in October.
Okay.
And so it just matters what those big packages are for. And steel's gonna be a
Steel's a big one.
complicated one.
Yeah.
Because it's very likely that maybe bid one's higher, and then come in lower. So that's just the fluctuation we're dealing with, and it's just gotten a lot trickier in the past, like 6-8 weeks, to be honest.
And when is demolition scheduled?
The fall.
The fall,
Yeah.
okay.
September.
But we're still in the permitting process.
Right.
That's still going along.
I'm just trying to think of the timeline, not anything other. I'm just trying to think, okay, when would they buy so-and-so
Well,
materials?
Yeah, one of the discussions we've had is that there are also, besides cost increases, there's not being able to get things. And, so you're weighing, on one hand, ordering now to ensure that you have it when you need it, but paying the higher price, or holding off, hoping the price drops. So there's a lot of things
Right.
going on.
But it is
you know.
possible that we could be on budget, but not on time, and that might be okay if we push off a little
Well,
bit. Huh?
That would
Yeah.
affect the budget.
So you're
Well, a little bit, but not as much as
Depends
the alternative.
You know,
could
it
be.
just, it
Yeah.
depends.
You could, if you then hit the, you're lucky and fortunate in terms of the costs, because those have gone down and
Right.
it's not.
Yeah.
But it really also matters the length, that's what we're,
And the other information that we've gotten is that, the actual labor is available and not, because the people aren't working, because the big companies are not working as much as they would like to, or every carpenter in town's out straight, I think.
Mhm.
But,
Yeah, my house
but,
isn't getting that.
there's not a lot of cranes and, going up. So there's that, but we are meeting next week on Wednesday.
So the bids are still
Because
going
we
out
have to get,
timely?
the bids aren't even, the early
Not there
bid
yet.
package is out. What
Oh, yes.
what is out for bid right now is the mitigation of the building. So you have to remove all the hazardous materials before you tear it down, and then the demolition and
Okay.
things like putting up fences around the property, but that's it. It's called the early bid package, and the next thing that would be bid would be the site prep, any ground improvements and that kind of thing that has to be done, leveling off the field and that. But the goal is that they get cement in before December.
Wow.
That's sort of the timeline.
Okay.
I can talk a little bit about the lawsuit is, as we spoke before, is basically holding up the MSBA from entering into the project funding agreement.
We got a waiver today.
I know, that's what I was going to talk about. The people who filed the lawsuit have added another item to the lawsuit that basically says the MSBA has failed to enter into a project funding agreement in a certain period of time that they're supposed to do it within. So we asked for a waiver for that time period, and it was granted today.
actually, sorry. They asked for a waiver from us. We had to give them permission, it was okay, not that met the 14 days,
Yeah.
which is why it's confusing, because
And didn't it work? It's an MSBA policy, not a law.
Yeah,
It's an
no, it was-
MSBA policy that you enter into
Right.
an agreement with a certain amount of days, but because of this lawsuit, you can't. So essentially, they're waiving their own policy and we're giving them the waiver
Yep.
so that we're not holding them accountable.
Right.
It's that simple,
Right.
not some big
Yeah.
violation of a law or a
No,
regulation.
But it was just another thing. Another thing.
Frivolous,
So,
the word I use.
and we're in the permitting process. That's where we're at.
In July
Anything
15th.
anything else about that? There's a couple of things that we need to bring up before we go. One is the superintendent's contract states that we, after his evaluation, we have to
Do
negotiate.
you want to say anything that St. Anne seems to be moving along?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Timely, so that the kids and the staff will be able to get in there
Oh, yeah, yeah,
plenty
yeah.
of time.
You know, painting and repair.
Can I
and-
ask you something? Did you go talk to the traffic commission to change the road again? Remember, when we had West Parish there, we had to do half the day to Smith Street, that the buses couldn't go down. Are we looking at that? And we don't want it at the last minute and have traffic.
But do we have to go to the commission to do it, or can we just do
It's
it?
nice to ask them to do that, so they put it, you have to put an ordinance, you have to put a temporary ordinance.
Okay.
City council approved
Yeah.
it and they typically would.
I can ask for it, but you need to let me know what you want me to ask the traffic
We
commission.
will do that, but what we first need to do is, there's a big difference between having the Vets kids going to St. Anne's and having West Parish, where we had to bus every single one of them. You know, we had 4 or 5 buses coming.
One bus or
coming
no
in.
buses? You still need, I mean, you're gonna have parents, you're gonna have everything
No,
else.
no.
That street is congested and Smith Street
No.
is to two-way. And if we give them enough notice,
Yeah.
everyone gets used to it.
Yeah.
Remember,
Okay.
there's Sheedy Park there, it's kind of,
Okay.
And I think we should do what we did before too, is when we went to the neighborhood and talked, we had a meeting at St. Anne's Church downstairs
yeah,
Yeah,
before
Okay, so
we
we can-
moved in.
we can do that.
yeah. I mean, it was simple. It was like from one time in the morning and then in the afternoon, it was fine.
So just a 2 portions of the day.
Yeah, it wasn't like a permanent
Before
one
and
way.
after school.
Like in East
Yeah.
Gloucester.
Yeah, it's just like
Dave's
you
Extension,
Gloucester, it's just for,
We can go look what we had
Chapel Street, whatever it is.
and just duplicate it and we'll make sure that the lights are working.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Turn it back on.
turn it back on, you know.
They were on for 3 years after the school closed.
Yeah, I know. And by the time we shut them off.
Well, they
but we
were
wanna
on
make-
for
We
a
need
long
to check,
time.
we need to check those out.
Yeah.
You know, and right, and then, you know what, don't forget that, you know what, Jonathan was in, so it was into backyard growers to make their little box for the gardens for the kids. And, you know, you want to make sure that it's a new school, it's a different school for them, but they remember things that they're gonna do at veterans. You know, they love doing their garden, they love doing certain things.
When are they moving in?
September.
No, well, they gotta do before then.
Oh, well, first they move out. And they're finished packing this week and moving out next week.
Okay,
Out to where?
They're moving. they're-
out of veterans
Out of
into
veterans.
Out
St. Anne's.
to where? To St. Anne's.
Yeah.
That's the question. So they're gonna be in
Yeah.
next week or
Well,
whatever.
yeah, I mean, the things will be in, actually, and, yeah.
Yeah, they're still painting and
So the
doing
repairs
things like
are
that.
done?
Boxes
I think
will
that
be.
that's-
Boxes will be there.
Yeah, I think that whole box is probably moving after the 4th.
Okay,
That's the week after that.
okay.
Okay, but.
So we'll just throw in a Dropbox.
Dropbox.
And don't forget,
Okay.
you have to also make sure that we get the right parking for the teachers to park.
Yep.
And let them know where they can and we get the school that they can't use, the Burns Field area. I
Can't
mean,
block
the,
yellow side.
church, yeah,
Yeah.
so
It's changed hands.
that's all. Same thing we did for West Parish, we just need to,
Modify it for that. Okay,
Good
There
reminders.
will be slightly less.
yeah, it's a smaller
occupancy
school.
because it's a
yeah, it'll be less, I understand that, but you know what, the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I know that neighborhood, I play concert in front of it. So you know what, I know what goes on there and I know that they just want some courtesy. You know, I have my seniors at Shitty Park. And you know what, they get that bump out, they can't understand. So you know what, any change, I can't even, so don't even go there.
It's the biggest one I've ever seen in my life.
I thought it was an island.
What was that all?
I was about to put an umbrella, sit there. It's an
Because there
island.
used to be no stop sign there, and then I was at this, I saw this, and Melissa Cox, ward council at the time, was like, hey, you know, they're looking for stop signs, they put a stop sign in on the sidewalk. But as you navigate from like Tallies toward Burnham's, right, and you get the stop signs on your right, you don't see it. And so everyone was blowing the stop sign because it was like off and to your right, so they had to bump the sidewalk out to get a stop sign, we could see it's made that intersection actually had everyone stop.
Well, Shepherd Street was that excuse. What happens is when you get money from the state and they come to do it, you have to go compliance with ADA. And now because of the new motorized, whatever, I says, well, you made them an island. That's not, I hate them, all of them. So we're gonna see what we can do. We took the money, well, I'm gonna ask for a waiver to cut them. Yeah, put a tree on. It seems like, that one seems like an island. I don't care what anyone says.
Okay.
And the other one, I don't like either. Cars are going right over it. It's dangerous.
Can we move on?
Well, that's what you need to look, what you're gonna have with your buses. They're not gonna make that corner at all, ever. They won't, I'm sorry.
All right,
That's
As I stated, the superintendent's contract states that we have to negotiate any pay increase after his evaluation. And it also says it's supposed to be done before June 30th.
You have to apply for a waiver.
Well, we could.
And ask
We
for
could.
permission.
Just ask him for permission to extend that deadline.
Get you next year, don't worry about it.
But I would like to refer it to the personnel subcommittee
Oh,
uh,
okay.
to meet with the superintendent.
so forth.
Waivers granted.
Waivers granted, okay.
He wants to go home too.
All right.
I'm meeting till August, is that okay?
And he don't care.
As long as what?
He's
Long as-
directed. I don't care when you do it.
All right, the other thing
I'll
is
send
that,
someone to wait.
Anyone who negotiates in good faith gets retroactive. Keep that in mind.
all right, and I don't know if you've all got notice, I got one, the MASC and MASS conference is actually, and is going to be in person this year in November. And if you're interested in going, we should let Stephanie know, because if we get our applications in first, we get a break.
Yeah, you have to get them in by the first week of July, so you would have to make a decision real
Can
quick.
I ask Stephanie send that to Enzo so I can.
It's apt.
It's in
Right now.
Hyannis.
During.
No, it's right
what?
after.
It's right after, it's the weekend after elections. It always is. It's really worthwhile. There's a lot of good workshops.
I've done down and back in a day.
Yeah,
I have relatives that could stay.
you can
Yeah.
stay there. This is usually the day you want to be there is Thursday. It was and then Friday morning is usually pretty good. Usually by Friday afternoon, that's gone downhill. And Saturday.
Well, now they put a lot on Saturday to get you to stay.
Oh, they have?
Yeah, if
Oh,
you look
okay.
at it, they
All right.
realize
All right,
the mass
well,
sex.
Usually
Can you
Saturday's
send
just.
Can you send out a reminder to us?
Okay,
Yes,
sure.
please. Ladies, we can always get.
Is there anything else we need to take up before we
You had a
adjourn?
pajama
No,
party,
but it's
wouldn't
been
you?
lovely meeting in person.
Yeah.
Why not?
I'm so
Yeah.
happy
Wow.
to
Okay.
not
Have
be.
time, Shannon. I'll get the room for us.
Remember a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So moved.
Aye.
Okay,
Yes.
roll call vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Yes.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you,
Okay, what do we
Maria.
need to do with these tables?
Thank
Leave
you,
them,
Maria.
exactly where they are.
Leave them.
This was,
So cool.
what we did.
Yeah,
High
they,
school's gonna be doing something.
Can you end the meeting, Maria?
Nice.